Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Noura.
Good morning, Lunga. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much. Happy International Women's Day to you too.
Thank you. It's a very exciting day. Oops, apologies. And without further ado, welcome Your Excellencies, esteemed guests. It is my honor to welcome you here today at the Break the Bias Assembly for International Women's Day at the Dubai Expo 2020, hosted by the Women's Pavilion. And welcome to everyone who has joined us virtually. Our guests who have logged in from all over the world are watching this event right now on Virtual Expo. My name is Noura Gargosh, and I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this assembly with my colleague, Lunga Kupiso.
Thank you so much, Noura, and a warm welcome to everybody in the room. And for those of you who are joining us online, my name is Lunga, as you have introduced me. Thank you. Since we have began working at Expo 2020 Dubai, really it has been an incredible time where we have witnessed the power of this platform to convene a diverse range of actors to affect change, from governments, the private sector, advocates, academics, I should say, and young change makers from all over the world. Today, it is humbling to see so many doers and thinkers who are gathered here to celebrate International Women's Day under the critical theme, Break the Bias.
Absolutely, Lunga. I mean, the conversations and events that we have been a part of in these 6 months at Expo have been both inspiring and humbling. During this assembly, we'll explore new ideas and strategies to break down harmful gender biases that continue to hold women back from reaching their full potential. We consider differences across dimensions of society, including in politics, private industry, youth, music, sports, and so much more. To start us off and to help set the scene for today's International Women's Day, please help me in welcoming Her Excellency Arhoud Al-Rumi, the Minister of State for Government, Development, and the Future of UAE. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be here today to celebrate International Women's Day. When women thrive, humanity thrives. A statement that is brought to life at the Women's Pavilion through the powerful women who grace its walls. These women have led the way throughout history. They have inspired us and will inspire future generations to reach new heights. And what a better place to celebrate them and all women in the world than with the backdrop of a World Expo, Expo 2020 Dubai, which was built on the very foundation of collaboration. Dear guests, if we have learned anything in the past 2 years, it is the importance of collaboration, of working together to overcome the biggest of challenges. We saw individuals, families, communities, and nations come together, men and women, working side by side to fight the pandemic like never seen before. We witnessed women leaders achieve remarkable results through inclusive and responsive governance. And as we continue to recover, we can take comfort in the lessons we have learned together as a global community, and in the conviction that we have a shared responsibility in shaping a better future. My fellow women leaders, we are at the core of this responsibility. Our role is more important than ever before and key to creating more resilient socio-economic systems. Over the past several years, the UAE has increased the number of parliament female members from 22% to 50%, representing the most improved country globally. Female ministers represent 27.5% of the UAE cabinet, holding strategic portfolios like space, climate change, advanced technology, education, youth, international cooperation, and the future. An achievement that we are proud of and will continue to nurture. On a global level, however, the overall gender gap in political empowerment has widened. The World Economic Forum estimates that it will take 145.5 years to attain gender equality in politics. 145.5 years. This is time we cannot afford, time we cannot accept. As women in public leadership, we have responsibility towards those who will follow. We cannot accept half of human capital to be underrepresented in government and legislation. We cannot accept biased policymaking. We cannot accept barriers to women leadership in the public sector. And we cannot accept the absence of feminine leadership in public service. My dear friends, our responsibility towards future generation is great. And as women in public leadership, we are stronger together. We must embrace our shared responsibility to break down barriers and empower young and aspiring women to reach the highest levels of government and decision-making. My fellow women leaders, let us share with them our experiences, mentor them, and guide them. We must lead by example with empathy, inclusiveness, tolerance, and humility, nurturing the values of feminine leadership. I call on all women in public leadership to facilitate the progression of women following in our footsteps, women who will inherit our mission. Let us together build environments to help them thrive and flourish. And to facilitate our efforts, I am pleased to announce that during the upcoming World Government Summit from March 29 to 30th, to be held here in Expo 2020, we will host leading women in public sector at the Women in Government Forum. The forum will provide a space for global dialogue on women leadership in the public sector, pressing challenges, lessons learned, best practices, and worldwide perspective. We will also launch the Women in Government Leadership Platform, a platform for women in public leadership from around the world to share expertise and knowledge and offer mentorship and support for young women as they navigate their journeys into public service. Dear friends, there is no doubt that we have come a long way, and together we shall persist. I call for us to continue to find strength in collaboration and meaningful alliances, because we are stronger together, and when women thrive, humanity thrives. Thank you.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your inspiring words. When women thrive, the entire globe thrives. I'm excited to introduce our first session, Breaking the Bias, Women in Diplomacy, which will explore the current state of women's participation and advancement in the world of foreign affairs and solutions to obstacles women face in top leadership positions. Dr. Sarah Shahab, Academic Programs Manager and Assistant Professor at the Anwar Gagash Diplomatic Academy, will first take us through their annual Women in Diplomacy Index. And then, first, that Diplomacy Index tracks the percentage of women ambassadors and women heads of overseas missions around the world. And then there will be a panel that will then follow. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome onto the stage Dr. Shahab.
Your Excellencies, Esteemed guests, good morning. Thank you for being with us today during this first session of the Assembly. When the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy was asked to curate this Women in Diplomacy session on International Women's Day, we knew that today would be the perfect platform and venue to launch the third edition of our Women in Diplomacy Index. To present our findings to you, and to follow this up with a lively discussion with our panelists on how to break the bias in the field of diplomacy. All right, here we go. The Women in Diplomacy Index is an annual report that is published by the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy since 2018. As my colleague just mentioned, the index maps the percentage of women ambassadors representing the 40 largest countries in the world, plus the European Union. The index only measures ambassadorships because we want to gauge the extent to which women are able to reach the top ambassadorships. We hope that by documenting women's representation in the top posts in diplomacy across the world, that we will be able to measure progress over time and give ministries of foreign affairs a way to benchmark themselves against their peers. Our index is very unique, and it's built on a huge data set of more than 4,200 ambassadorial appointments spanning the 40 countries and the European Union. It is the only one in the Middle East and North Africa region to undertake this task. And we are very proud of it at AGDA. So what did we find in 2022? I have to share the bad news first before giving you the good news. The bad news is that women are still severely underrepresented in the top diplomatic posts. And the numbers don't lie, they speak for themselves. Out of 4,293 ambassadorial appointments that we covered in our 2022 data set, only 927 of those positions went to women. This means that women represent just a small 21.6% of all ambassadorial appointments across the 40 largest economies in the world and the EU. This is not equality, and this is not parity. Far from it. The good news, though, is that we are making progress. We're making slow progress, but it's progress nonetheless, and it should be cautiously celebrated. When we launched the index in 2018, as you can see on this slide, we found that women made up 16% of all ambassadorial appointments across the countries of the G20 and the EU. This percentage share increased to 20.7% in 2021 and then increased to 21.6% in 2022. These results are showing us that more countries are appointing more women to ambassadorships more than ever before. And as I said, this is cause for cautious optimism. Our data set looked at a very large group of countries. And this map right here represents all the 40 countries that we looked at in our data set. The numbers that you see highlighted in green illustrate an improvement in women's representation in the top diplomatic posts in 2021. And as you can see from this picture, overall, it's a very positive one because more countries are appointing more women. Out of the 40 countries in our data set, we found that 2 countries achieved gender parity in their ambassadorial appointments, Canada and Sweden. In both countries, sure. In both countries, women make up 50% of all ambassadorial appointments. The other countries in our top 5 are Norway, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. In all 3 states, women make up between 40 to 46% of all ambassadorial appointments. And in all 5 cases, we've seen a very good improvement since 2018. I invite you to take a closer look at this map in the exhibition hall right outside, where you will see 2 posters with the details of the map. And if you scan the QR code on the side of the poster, you will have access to the full index and the full result. It's a public document that's available on the AGDA website. Apart from these somewhat positive results, we also wanted to look at where women ambassadors are going. Where are they posted? Our findings show that Portugal is the #1 destination for women ambassadors, followed by the United Nations in New York. Overall, however, European destinations and international organizations are the top places where women ambassadors are posted to the most. Within Europe, the Nordic states as a group are the top recipients of women ambassadors, and they're also the top senders of women ambassadors. In fact, what we found in our data was quite interesting and quite clear. Countries that post the highest number of women ambassadors abroad are also the top recipients or hosts of the largest number of women ambassadors, which shows a very clear reciprocity trend. Now, we also wanted to take this a step further and check whether or not women were also being sent to top posts or top ambassadorships. Now, we realize that what a top ambassadorship is or what a top post is could be very different from one country to the next. And that definition of what a top ambassadorship is can be quite tricky. But for the purpose of our exercise, we used the G7 as a proxy for top ambassadorships. Given the G7 states' political and economic clout and importance to the rest of the world. And when we looked at the numbers, as you can see on this slide, the number of women that are posted to G7 states are not very good. In fact, the numbers are quite low. But as you can see from the map, Canada again tops our list because it did receive the highest number of women ambassadors, followed by the United States in 2022. To conclude, are we making progress? Are more women reaching top ambassadorial posts in 2022 than they did before? The answer is a definite yes. But with just 21.6% of all ambassadorial appointments going to women, the picture is crystal clear. Diplomacy is still a man's world, and we are a long way away from ensuring gender equality in the top posts. More needs to be done. To help us understand why this is the case, and to help us find solutions for how to break this diplomatic glass ceiling and break the bias in diplomacy, I would now like to invite His Excellency Nikolai Mladenov, the Acting Director General of the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, to join me on stage to moderate a panel with our 4 esteemed speakers. His Excellency is joined today by Her Excellency Ambassador Marcy Grossman, Canada's ambassador in the UAE, Her Excellency Selina Lescano, Minister of Women for the Republic of Paraguay, His Excellency Thomas Greminger, the Director of the Geneva Center for Security Policy, and Ms. Afra Al-Hamili, the Deputy Director of the Strategic Communications Department at the UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Your Excellencies, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Sarah, for presenting the results of AGDA's index on women in diplomacy. My name is Nikolai Mladenov. I've recently joined the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy as its acting director general, and I must say that one of the most exciting things that I discovered when joining the academy was the index. I hope that in the coming years we will be able to expand it to cover more and more countries, because it is a very useful tool to achieve exactly the goal of this session, and that is to break the bias. And there is a massive bias in the world of foreign affairs and diplomacy that women need to break. There's a glass ceiling that women need to break through, And there is a global understanding that the world needs to come to, that the map that you saw a few minutes ago, with the percentages of how many women ambassadors each country has, if we had to do that map to the global population, every country in the world is 50% men and 50% women, more or less. So diplomacy and the world of peacemaking and foreign affairs is massively losing out by not using 50% of the global capacity of the world's population to deal with foreign affairs and diplomacy. Canada came out first in the index this year. And I'm very happy to have here with us the Canadian ambassador to the UAE to tell us, really, Masi, what is the secret? How did Canada get to this stage at which you have now full parity in your diplomatic service? I'm sure that wasn't always the case. Am I right?
You are right. That was not always the case. First of all, let me just say happy International Women's Day to everyone who's come out today early in the morning. It's one of my favorite days of the year, and it's such an honor to share it with you. I'm so delighted that Canada tops the list, the index list this year, but I also want to say that my good friend Liselott Andersson is here, the ambassador to Sweden, and I just want to say that literally our results go hand in hand, and I know that because I scoured through the data last night. But just to say that Canada has succeeded actually on the shoulders of Sweden, because Sweden was actually the leader. So Canada took a page out of the playbook of Sweden to be where we are today. So I just wanted to recognize Liselott. I also wanted to just say that Canada actually right now has 52 of its 104 ambassadorships that are represented by women. Not only are they represented in the G7 countries, but actually our women are actually in a lot of hardship posts, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But how did we get through the journey? So think about it this way, just a little bit of context. In 1943, we posted our first female Foreign Service officer to New York, to our Consulate General. In 1956, we had our first chargée d'affaires, and she was posted in Lebanon. And in 1958, we had our actual first fully fledged ambassador, and it was to Israel. And actually, coincidentally, it was our first Canadian ambassador to Israel, and it also happened to be a woman. So we've come a long way since the 1940s and 50s, but just to give you a sense of how long that journey is and how many obstacles are in that way. In 1971, if you were a foreign service officer, a female foreign service officer, you actually had to quit your job if you got married, or else you couldn't be posted abroad. Because there was a theory that women cannot do two things at the same time: be married and be foreign service officers. So from 1971, which is in my lifetime, to now, it's actually been an incredible journey. Also to say that right now we have 9 female ambassadors just in this region. Libya, Qatar, myself here, our representative for Canada and the Palestinian Authority, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, if I haven't already mentioned it. So as I said, women are going to our G7 posts. We have a head of mission right now for UK. We had one in France up until recently. So we are very, very well represented. So how do you get from having to quit your job to be a foreign service officer to parity? So I think there's really 4 things I want to talk about that are important. I actually had 3, but I thought about it this morning, actually. The first one is actually leadership. So this journey starts from the top. In 2015, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, announced the first gender parity cabinet. It was definitely the first gender parity cabinet in Canadian history, and I'm pretty sure it was the first gender parity cabinet in the world. And he set the direction. He told our department, do not send me a list of ambassadors that is not gender equal. And our department tried. They made up all kinds of excuses. Oh, they're not ready. Oh, they're not in the pipeline. Or we don't have enough. And he just kept sending the list back every single year until 2018, the year that I went out as Consul General to Dubai, we actually hit parity. And if you look at our broader ambassador or heads of mission, If you included actually consul generals and heads of agencies, we're actually even higher than 50%. So it starts with leadership, and our Prime Minister would not take no for an answer. The second important point is conscious and purposeful policy. Canada has been well regarded internationally for its domestic policy. We've had a Ministry of Women for over 50 years. We have very, very generous policies that support women in the workforce. We have maternal benefits of paid maternity leave for 1 year. We have all kinds of domestic policies, but our Prime Minister actually decided to create, in 2015, a feminist foreign policy. And as I said, taking a page out of the book of Sweden to formulate that. Now, when I first heard that, and I was a female head of mission, I was like, what the heck could he be talking about, feminist foreign policy? What even is that? But it's actually genius. The policy is basically that any international representation we have, whether it's our women representing our countries abroad, whether it's our development policy, whether it's our trade policy or our feminist policy, has to be looked at through the gender lens. Meaning we will not negotiate a trade deal with anyone unless they look at the trade agreement through the gender lens. We will not give out development money to countries unless we are able to see how it helps women and how it brings them to decision-making tables. So that would be the second, is policy. The third, I would say, is, and I'll just segue to one other policy. One of the pillars of our feminist foreign policy is our women, peace, and security policy and initiative. And basically, that's UN 1325. It's a 20-year-old initiative. And the premise of women, peace, and security, which is actually one of the very important shared attributes we have here in the UAE between Canada and the UAE. But the premise of women, peace, and security is more women at the peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace-building tables, more peace. And the research actually says that. More peace negotiations end up peaceful when you bring women to the table. So more women equals less war. And I think if you look around the world right now, I think everyone in this room can agree that it is a good thing. Thank you. Very quickly, I'm running out of time. The third element is support. In order to get from 2015 to 2018, we needed to actually help women in our organization. We did that by daring them to be bold, to reach high. We said, your male colleagues are reaching high, 2, 3 levels up, you should too. And we know that women traditionally, they only apply for jobs that they know that they're going to get or they think they meet all the criteria for. But our department said, aim high, be bold, and then put a whole bunch of policies and procedures into place to support them through mentorship, through training, through coaching. And finally, tools. Canada is one of the pioneers of the gender balance assessment. Basically, you cannot get money from the Department of Finance, you cannot create policy in the Government of Canada without assessing your request to the Centre of Government through the gender lens. And with that tool has really been, again, I wrote policy in 2016. I actually wrote policy to try to get our Canada pavilion here at Expo, and I had to prove to the government why our pavilion was going to further the cause of women. And actually, now that I think of it, mission accomplished right today. So that's the journey. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Marcy, and you point to some extremely important factors, leadership, and obviously a very systematic approach, and really breaking new ground with feminism in foreign policy. I'll let you in on a little secret. We in the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy actually teach our students about feminist foreign policy. These are future aspiring Emirati diplomats. The UAE itself is an outlier on many issues, including on the issue of women in diplomacy in the Arab world. And it's great to have here with us today Afra, who is the Deputy Director of the Strategic Communications Department at the Foreign Ministry, and one of the rising stars of a growing cadre of Emirati women diplomats. Afra, sadly, the Arab world, unfortunately, comes out at the bottom of the index. While the UAE is an outlier, the rest of the region still is lagging behind. And we have to do much more than we are currently doing to promote the engagement of women in foreign policy positions. Again, we in the Academy see a trend, and that is that now, I think currently 60% of our students are women, mostly Emirati. But what do you think needs to be done in the rest of the Arab world to really come up to the level of this country and push it even further?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nikolai, for having me today, and happy International Women's Day to everyone here. It's a very important day for us, even in the United Arab Emirates. It's very true what you mentioned, that women in the Arab world are still very much underrepresented when it comes to ambassadorial posts. But I know that the UAE is working extremely hard on changing that. And as you mentioned, we're pioneers in the region when it comes to ambassadorial posts. But I just want to mention that while the numbers might be small, but that it's evolving year by year, as we've seen even by the index. And for example, we have Her Excellency Lanan Seiba, who's currently our representative at the United Nations, also the current chair of the Security Council, and also the UAE is the chair right now for the presidency of the Security Council for the month, which is, very troubling times at this time. We have Her Excellency Hind Al Ataiba, who was appointed last year to France, one of our main strategic countries right now, and it's growing in importance for us. And she was the first female ambassador to be appointed to France, and we're extremely proud of that. We also have Her Excellency Hafsa Al Ulama, who's in Berlin, another extremely important market for us. And she was also appointed to Montenegro and Brazil, a very seasoned diplomat. And I don't want to go over all the list of the diplomats that we have and ambassadors. I don't want to bore everyone here. But I also want to just quickly mention that the last ambassadorial post that we have had recently had Her Excellency Mariam Al-Kaabi be appointed to a very important strategic partner to us as well, Egypt. She's also the permanent representative at the Arab League, which shows us that we have appointed women to key strategic posts, and that is getting more significant. The UAE also places huge importance on women empowerment and women's rights, and even at the political level. The Federal National Council has women representative being exactly 50%, so there's very important heavy emphasis on gender parity in that regard. A third of our cabinet, ministerial cabinet, is women, which is not only a great number when you look at it from a regional perspective, but also from a global international perspective as well. So these are some numbers. As you mentioned, Nikolai, 60% of AGDA diplomats every year are females. Over at the ministry, I believe the numbers are around 48% of all the diplomatic staff being women. So what this shows us is that there is a huge pipeline of very high caliber, well-trained and well-supported women coming into the pipeline. These are some of the things I want to mention in this regard, but also, and my colleague was joking to me about this yesterday, that a lot of the world old nations, it took years, almost hundreds of years, for them to have their first female diplomat. We're a very young country, we're 50 years old, and I think we're doing pretty good in that regard. So these are some of the things I would just like to mention, but to quickly wrap up and answer your question, Nikolai, I think that the UAE, as a pioneer in this region, I would say that more countries should kind of follow its lead. We have the leadership placing huge emphasis on women's empowerment and women's rights, and I think that is the very essence of it today. We have diplomatic institutions in place, like the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, making sure that they're very well educated and trained to enter the diplomatic corps. And we also have, the societal and legal laws and legislations in place to make sure that the women are very well protected, promoted, and supported in whatever arena that they would like to enter. So these are just a few things that I wanted to mention here in this regard. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Afra. You made a very important link, which is very apparent here in the UAE, and that is between the domestic policies of a country and its foreign policy representation. And the more that you have laws that actually encourage women to participate fully and are well protected and have an equal status in society, the more you see in the diplomatic service. And I think this is what we're witnessing here in the UAE, and hopefully that will be a good example for for others. Both of you spoke of the need for leadership. And it's great that we have today among us a minister, the Minister of Women's Affairs from Paraguay. Thank you very much for joining us, Celia. You lead a ministry that has been dedicated to women's affairs in your country. Some countries have ministries, others countries don't. There's an ongoing debate which works better, but from where you're looking at it, what are the lessons that you can share with us in terms of the Paraguayan example of promoting women's participation in society as you lead the Ministry of Women's Affairs in your country?
Buenos días, yo voy a hablar en español. Feliz de poder estar hoy aquí compartiendo con ustedes y visibilizar el trabajo que estamos haciendo del Ministerio de la Mujer de Paraguay.
First of all, good morning. I'm very happy to be here with us, with you today, to talk more about women's rights and to advance the conversation and work together for women's rights.
Saludar a todas las mujeres de Paraguay y del mundo este 8 de marzo que nos une una vez más a reivindicar los derechos de las mujeres, las preocupaciones y también los avances en el mundo.
We're here to talk about all the challenges and all the work that we have done to advance women's rights in the world and to keep the conversation going and to be able to work together to achieve more success for women in the future.
El Ministerio de la Mujer de Paraguay es el órgano rector, normativo y articulador de las políticas públicas de los derechos de las mujeres, y eso es muy importante para el Estado paraguayo, tener un ente que regula, que controla y que trabaja en los avances en las políticas públicas de los derechos de las mujeres.
The Ministry of Women's Affairs of Paraguay is the ministry in charge of the design and implementation of public policy directed to advancing women's rights in Paraguay, and that is something very important and is a huge achievement, not just for Paraguay, but for women in general, to advance and to further the work in this field.
Hay mucho que hablar del Ministerio de la Mujer en los avances y en la reivindicación de los derechos, pero es importante recalcar de que las mujeres en Paraguay no están solas teniendo este Ministerio de la Mujer y que podemos trabajar conjuntamente tanto el sector público como el sector privado y la sociedad civil en trabajar y aunar esfuerzos para lograr la igualdad real de las mujeres, esa autonomía real en lo económico, en lo social, en lo político, en todas las esferas de la sociedad.
The existence of the Ministry of Women's Affairs in Paraguay is the government saying that women are not alone and that they have support and that they have the support of their government to be able to advance their rights in all the fields, in the social, economic and political fields as well.
Otro punto importante es resaltar el crecimiento de la Secretaría primeramente de la Secretaría de la Mujer y luego al rango del Ministerio de la Mujer, y eso demuestra el compromiso del Estado paraguayo en seguir trabajando y seguir cumpliendo los compromisos internacionales, los tratados y convenios ratificados por el gobierno nacional para seguir avanzando y seguir cumpliendo con los derechos de las mujeres.
It is important to note that at first the Ministry of Women's Affairs in Paraguay was a secretariat, but then it became to be the Ministry of Women's Affairs, and that shows the commitment of the Paraguayan government to advancing women's rights and actually the commitment of following the international treaties and all the guidelines for advancing women's rights.
Este es un trabajo de todos, es un trabajo de todas las sociedades en un ambiente de democracia, en un ambiente libre, que tenemos que seguir ratificando el trabajo y valorando el trabajo que hicieron ya las mujeres antes, ahora y lo que vamos a seguir haciendo las mujeres.
We need to recognize the work that has been done so far and pave the way for the success of women of the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to have here at the Expo 2020 this global perspective with different views on the challenges ahead from every part of the world, and particularly as we talk about the empowerment of women. Last on our panel, we have a very interesting speaker, Ambassador Thomas Greminger, who, among many other responsibilities, also heads the Secretariat of the International Gender Champions, which is a group of about 300 men and women who are dedicated to breaking down gender barriers around the world. Now, this group includes people from Lana Nusseibeh as the UAE ambassador to the UN, to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Michelle Bachelet, the head of the UN Human Rights Council, many others. Ambassador, in my experience, I'll be very frank with you, I've heard so many commitments being made by politicians about gender equality and promoting gender balance. And yet I've seen so few of these commitments actually turn into action. How do you, from the perspective of your secretariat, how do you ensure that the commitments that public leaders make are actually turned into real policies and real action and held accountable? That would be a great lesson, I think, for all of us to take away from today's session.
Thank you very much, Nikolai, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me to celebrate with all of you this International Women's Day. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here. Well, excellent question, and let me, I promise I'll give you at least an attempt of an answer to it, but let me tell you a few things about the International Gender Champions. As you rightly say, it's a network of leaders in the international diplomacy and cooperation. Basically, principals of international organizations and ambassadors, permanent representatives. We are active mainly in 6 multilateral hubs, places like New York, Geneva, Paris, Nairobi, what else? Half a dozen multilateral hubs. Our most prominent member is indeed Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General. I was myself a gender champion when I was at the helm of the Organization for Security and Cooperation as Secretary General of the OEC. I'm also now in my current function as Director of the Geneva Center for Security Policy. I'm a gender champion, and in a way, by coincidence, we also host the Secretariat. Well, the strategic objective about this network is pretty straightforward. We want to provide incentives to leaders in diplomacy to do more than just a routine job in mainstreaming gender and in empowering women. We provide them with publicity. This is the positive incentive, but we also ask them for accountability. That is, they have to report about implementing the pledges they have adopted. And this takes me to the tools we work with. Again, relatively simple. We ask the champions to adopt a number of pledges, personal and institutional ones. I'll come back to them in a second. And we offer a platform for exchanges among champions, basically to provide soft peer pressure, and I would also say to provide peer inspiration to them. Briefly, the Secretariat, also quite straightforward, organizes, facilitates the processes, including in terms of accountability, but it mainly supports the champions by offering impulses, support, etc. So let me briefly talk about the commitments and also tell you how we then make sure that this is more than just a commitment on a web page or on a piece of paper. Normally, we invite champions to adopt commitments that make sense in their sphere of influence. We would invite them to adopt an internal commitment that would be relevant for change, for reform in their institution, and normally a commitment that would focus on their external policies. And for instance, when I was Secretary General of the OEC, I adopted a gender parity strategy, so my pledges would at least partly focus on key components of implementing this gender parity strategy, which was not obvious because, as you are perhaps aware of, the OEC is at least partly an organization that focuses on hard security, and in hard security you have still relatively small pools of women experts. Another pledge that I adopted was to come up with a plan of action to combat sexual harassment at the workplace. And the last, in my last mandate year, I engaged to embark on systematic in preventing sexual exploitation and abuse, which again is a very important topic if you run an organization that has more than 2,000 field staff active in our OEC's 15 field operations. Each champion also has to commit to two core pledges, institutional pledges if you want, and here with sufficient numbers of champions making the same commitment, you basically also contribute to shifting norms, to shaping realities. And one is a very straightforward one, and happy that we are very much in line with this pledge, and that is the panel parity pledge, to no longer sit in a single sex panel. And this is actionable, it is very visible, and it's also easily accountable. And it has made manuals unacceptable in hubs of the International Gender Champion. And this has impacts. It has an obvious one. It gives more space to women experts, raises their profile, but it also challenges us to build pipelines, to build up pools of women experts and leaders, and particularly in those areas where it is more challenging. Hard security, but also science, technology, engineering, math. And what we have seen now after 6 years is that we've seen a number of initiatives by champions to create fellowships, to set up training and mentoring opportunities for women experts and leaders, to make sure that you have pools that are expanding, that you can then draw from. Second core pledge is the gender-based violence pledge, which has become mandatory on the 1st January of this year. And this calls on all champions to speak up and stand up for zero tolerance of sexist attitudes and behaviors and gender-based violence. And this also creates a vehicle for champions to advocate and act, and we see this, for instance, already translating into action by a campaign, I Say No to Sexism, in the UN office in Geneva, and this is also soon to be taken up by the President of the UN General Assembly. And let me perhaps conclude by the incentive, the obligation for champions to join, to work on a platform to meet and exchange. And so, for instance, we will have tonight the annual gathering of the Geneva Champions Hub, hosted by the US mission. And so we will have probably around 70 heads of international organizations and permanent representatives there. And what we have seen out of these gatherings is also initiatives. It's collective action. For instance, we have these gatherings have triggered the creation of impact groups on specific themes. So you would have a theme on representation change management. That is something, of course, very interesting for perm reps. We have groups that work on nuclear, on justice, trade, and so these groups would allow to identify blind spots in terms of knowledge, policy, or action. And to conclude by mentioning the most prominent example of such a group, and that is the Trade Impact Group that was led by the Executive Director of ITC, Arantxa Gonzalez, and the ambassadors of Iceland and Sierra Leone, and supported well by Canada. And they drafted the first ever Buenos Aires Declaration on Women and Trade and mobilized 127 countries to join. And that is, clearly a policy platform that has impact. So, to conclude, Gender Champions, this is a network to provide incentives to leaders in diplomacy, and it's very much about pledges, publicity, and accountability, and I would say peer inspiration.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I want to thank all of our panelists for kicking off a very exciting day, I think, here at the Expo today on the subject of breaking the bias. We saw from different perspectives, from different parts of the world, how you can, if you have the leadership, the system, the will, and the understanding to really move forward on including women in all levels of political decision-making policies, and particularly in the world of foreign policy and diplomacy. There's hardly any job in the world which cannot be done by either men or women. But there's one job that is far better done by women than by men, and there's plenty of empiric evidence, unfortunately, of that. And that is to make peace. And that is where we certainly need much more women's participation and women's leadership, not just representing countries, but engaging in peace processes, building negotiations, and helping us really build peace and consolidate it. That is clearly something the world of tomorrow will need much more because of what's happening today. Thank you very much for this panel, and thank you for our guests as well, and look forward to the rest of this exciting day. Thank you.
Thank you to our moderator and all our panelists for sharing their candid thoughts and insights on ensuring a future with equal representation across both foreign policy and within top leadership positions around the world. When we speak about the future of gender equality, we must ensure that the voices of the next generation are front and center. I'm excited to introduce our next session, hosted by the New Zealand Country Pavilion, titled Change Make Her, the next generation of movers, shakers, and action takers, which will feature an inspiring lineup of bold young women who are here to share their stories of transformation and breakthrough. To kick this off, please help me in welcoming His Excellency Clayton Kimpton, Commissioner General of New Zealand to Expo 2020, Dubai.
Assalamu alaikum, tēnā tātou katoa, a warm good morning. Ministers, Your Excellencies, our much valued partner, the Women's Pavilion, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining New Zealand here on International Women's Day for this special Change Make Her event. New Zealand is well known for a long and proud history of promoting gender equality. Today, and not for the first time, the most senior positions of our nation are held by women, including our Governor-General, Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Chief Justice. This is an achievement we are proud of. And this session is squarely in the hands of our new generation of leaders, and an excellent lineup is in store for us. I urge you to listen carefully to the stories and values that you're about to hear, and take these values into your homes, workplaces, and communities. We all have a role to play in empowering women and promoting gender equality. This will ensure a sustainable tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Kia ora and shukran.
Some days it feels like the world wants us divided, starved of space for so long, taught to see adversaries in sisters, as if there's only room for a few of us. But we've found resilience in sisterhood, strength in numbers. The trailblazers that lit our way are here to lift you up, and in time you'll do the same for the women that follow in your footsteps, a path that gets clearer with each passing year. We're done talking about a better future. We're already here, in this room. So fight for now, for your communities, for yourselves, and the women sitting next to you. Our shared experiences stretch across oceans, a night sky of connections, continents apart. Listen, learn from each other, share your stories even when it's uncomfortable. Make uncomfortable your home. Kia kaha, stay strong, and remember, when you move, we all walk with you.
Love is teaching me to speak the language, a rhythm of a place so far away. Oh, the closer I get to know you, that much more I want to say. Yes, I have a million questions to be answered. Do you mind my asking you today? I said I want to know what makes you so beautiful to be here. That thing is Emanea, 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 Emanea. Come on. Emanea, 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 Emanea. I didn't have the words before I met you. Now my heart is filled with poetry. I'm learning to trust my feelings and all my fears I'm letting go. Yes, with God tattooed heaven high above us, the night embracing all I see. Come with me now. Come with me now. You're bringing out the magic in my soul. Emanea, 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 dea, dea, you hung out, oh yeah, Emanea, dea, dea, you know you're there, Emanea, 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 yes, Emanea, 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 it means beautiful. Emanea, it means beautiful, beautiful, yes. Emanea, 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 Emanea. Don't you know it means beautiful? Oh yes. Hey! Emanea, Emanea. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Emanea, Emanea. Shukran.
My name is Alexia, and I'm the founder of Girl Boss New Zealand. I'm delighted to be here to celebrate International Women's Day with you. Today, I present to you an inspiring lineup of bold and diverse young leaders. What they lack in age, they make up for in courage and heart. Each one of them standing up on behalf of others to make our world a better place. I am so excited for them to share their journey with you, and I'm sure you can't wait to meet them too. So please join me in welcoming our speakers, Her Excellency Shama Al-Mazuri, Peyton Klein, the Honourable Patience Masua, and Rez Gardi. Our first speaker today is a young woman who can surely be described as a champion. A champion for youth, a champion for our lives, our voices, and our aspirations. When appointed to government in 2016, at just 22 years of age, she was the youngest serving government minister in the world. Now she sits at the top table as the Minister of State for Youth Affairs. Please welcome the United Arab Emirates' very own youth champion, Her Excellency Shama Al Mazzouri.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to take a moment to greet my fear, my self-doubt, my vulnerabilities, who casually escort me to all important events I go to. Yet today, I feel very compelled to take a moment and give them the attention that they deserve as the stars of today's speech. Of course, I didn't invite them, by the way. I never do. If it was for me, I'd rather speak about private equity, and I'd rather speak about anything but vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities grow dear, yet we all live to protect this picture-perfect, handmade portrait that we've established on our Instagram accounts, and we're not willing to let anyone disturb it. However, today I'm putting it out there just in case someone was listening and thought, oh, ministers don't have fear. Well, they do, and it could knock them to their knees. But the fact that they do doesn't mean that they submit to them. On February 10th, 2016, I was appointed to lead the Ministry of Minister of State for Youth Affairs in the United Arab Emirates. And my job was to create the blueprint of an optimal ecosystem that cultivates the largest growing demographic in the UAE, young people, to reach their full potential. I was deeply honored, thrilled, enthusiastic to serve, but also I was overwhelmed. As the calendar kept filling up with engagements, meetings, travels, speeches, forums, fear, self-doubt, and insecurity creeped in. And soon enough, it led me to start questioning what people thought of me, but also questioning myself. A lot of people thought, what is this young girl going to do? What does she know about developing young people's well-rounded capabilities, aspirations to reach their full potential, their best-suited careers, their healthiest minds, bodies, and spirits, their top values as citizens, their true purpose as human beings? The imaginary voice in my head kept talking. And as the days and weeks passed, fear took over me and convinced me, you know what, this might not be for me. I felt lost and I couldn't decide what to do next. And I was filled with void because in fear, we empty ourselves. And it's an effort to silence our critique somehow. We stand still and we freeze. Shortly after, I found myself typing into Google, what is my purpose? What should I do in life? What's my calling? And many of us read the experiences of others to help us find our own place in the universe. On the surface, typing those words may seem trivial, but by pressing enter in that exact moment, it hit me. I was looking for myself, my purpose, on the internet. And had I continued this trajectory, I would still be scrolling down today, 6 years on, dismissing all the answers that exist within. And this is where I decided to look next. And it wasn't an easy exercise. It didn't happen overnight. Sorry, Hollywood. I had to go through layers and layers of fear, self-doubt, and core memories to find the one that would serve me. And I say the one that would serve me, not the one that was true, because you see, self-worth is not a matter of true and false. There isn't a scientific method to validate someone's self-worth. It's given. We're born with it. It's granted. It's not earned. Let me prove that to you maybe with a metaphor. Have you ever met an infant who questions their self-worth? Just like a gymnast. They start with 10 points, and then they start receiving deductions for each mistake. In some way, so do human beings. We begin life when we're born with a natural, complete sense of worth. And as we grow, we begin to serve as our own judges, deducting points when we misunderstand the nature of living, learning, and often we forget that we are human beings in training, and that having a tumble is part of life. It's not an unforgivable sin. We are works in progress. We're releasing, we're learning, and we're expanding. So instead of scrolling down endlessly through other people's answers and through Google, I started scrolling down my core memories, the ones that made me who I am today. And I remembered how when I was growing up, so many of my classmates were smarter, faster, they jumped higher. They've always had something that I felt maybe I didn't have. I couldn't control any of that. Abilities are hard to control, but effort isn't hard to control. And what I controlled was how I worked, how hard I worked. And the difference in abilities fueled me. I developed a discipline to outwork my classmates relentlessly. And this is something I learned from my father. And I made a promise to myself when I was young to continue to embody that. Whenever I committed myself to an activity or task, and I was about to put my fears down or put my pen down and take a break, my father would say, "Shama, just one more." You see, he was that kind of person who always takes the extra mile, who always makes sure he has given his best. And he made sure we see him model it every single day. And we see him say it and repeat it every single day. He would continue to say it until I became more confident and my fears began to wither. And I grew into the task at hand and I totally nailed it. Every achievement I scored started with one more step, continued into one more minute, one more repetition, one more page, and one more practice test. And he kept saying, the difference between average and outstanding, Shama, is often just one more. And the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is the extra mile you traveled, the extra step you took, the extra hour you put in, the extra blood, sweat, and tear you pour in. One more kept me going because I wasn't ready to quit. My strategy was anytime I felt fear, I would think about learning, challenging, and confronting the obstacles with one more. I would think of one more step as a positive, constructive force, not as a big drag, and try it out. Fear wasn't completely gone, not until now, but it wasn't my enemy anymore. I befriended fear. Just like an angry friend, I let him or her vent out, and I understood he or she has good intentions protecting me. So thank you, fear. I didn't resist it, I embraced fear. Instead of carrying it as an upset stomach, I now enjoy it as delicate butterflies flying around me. And it made all the difference. It was like I was listening to a hard rock song on the radio. And I changed the frequency by 0.1 when I did one more, and suddenly it became Beethoven. Fear is excitement missing a breath, and I changed the frequency by one more step to cultivate courage in that step. And we often think fear is lack of courage. However, if you think about this for a moment, we feel fear. Why? Because we're trying, because we're leaving a familiar turf, because we had courage to grow, because we had courage to take one more step. And we all have fear in common, from kings to kids to soldiers to stay-at-home moms. Pushing through fear can be a vital antidote to low self-esteem. And my experience with one more step helped build the way I face fear. I learned mirror, mirror on the wall was asking the wrong questions. It's not about who's the smartest or the best, fill in the blank of them all. But the right question, in my perspective and my experience, was, mirror, mirror, am I the person I want to see every single morning? Do my actions reflect my values? Am I a better person today than I saw in myself yesterday? Did I cultivate courage despite fear? Did I do one more repetition? How can I make myself proud? And how can I get my discipline and willpower on to face that fear? and embrace it. Of course, this isn't a recipe that fits all. You've got to refer to your own self-manual to figure out what works. But whenever you do, make sure you don't let fear and self-doubt take the driver's seat. Sometimes the secret of life comes down to bold, creative moves in the mind and in the world, and maybe a truly fearsome life where fear is embraced as a fuel. It doesn't take a lot of accumulated wisdom. It might be simply reflected in something so simple my father used to say. We have a shrewd strategic plan, Shamma. The plan is one more. It's called doing things. It's really easy to get wrapped up in a pretty knot of ideas and fancy plans. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to cut through all that and just get to work. How about we all let go of fears and doubt and worries and lean into Dad's plan, known as doing things, a little more today. Here's to being fearsome and giving our gifts as women to our families and to the world, my dear sisters. Happy International Women's Day.
Our next speaker was just 15 when a chance meeting with a classmate forced her to confront the often dehumanizing intolerance faced by refugees. Determined to imbue humanity with more compassion, she set up the Global Minds Initiative, which builds friendship and understanding between people from different cultures. She has been featured in Teen Vogue, the New York Times, and is a recipient of the YWCA Racial Justice Award. Please join me in welcoming Peyton Klein.
Where is home for you? That is my favorite question. As the great-granddaughter of Jewish refugees, I grew up on stories of otherness. My great-grandfather fleeing the Russian pogroms and struggling to build a new life in the United States. It is in the intimacy of this question I find myself searching for my own history. Where do you belong? Where do I belong? This question takes me back to my most vulnerable moments of discomfort when I was an outsider. 4th grade, the hassle of the yellow school bus. My stomach churned as I looked for the comfort of a bus buddy. 6th grade, in the chaos of the middle school lunchroom, my heart dropped as I searched for a friendly face. A room of tables, always with too few chairs. And as I started college just a few months ago, I again found myself distraught with the true homesickness. I longed not for my childhood Pittsburgh, but rather for a closeness of community, the comfort of being known, the relief of a built-in support network. In these periods of discomfort, both past and present, I'm taken back to my freshman year of high school, the moment when I started building my own home. It was a November morning when I first met Khawla. She'd sat behind me for months, but I never had bothered to introduce myself. And all it took was a simple hello. After that, Khawla and I started chatting daily. Our friendship blossomed. We spent our study halls struggling through algebra homework and daydreaming of our lives beyond high school. I went to her 18th birthday party, and she brought me her favorite Syrian dessert, harissa. With each conversation, I learned something new. She told me about her experiences at a Turkish refugee camp, her aspirations to be a lawyer, her journey from Syria, and her new community in Pittsburgh. Together, we found our own shared home. As awkward freshmen, we navigated both biology and new friendships. But I understood that our experiences were far from the same. Students made fun of her accent. Teachers mocked her hijab. Our school failed to provide proper language access. And as I got to know other immigrant youth from my school, I heard similar narratives of loneliness and isolation. In search of a place to build new friendships like Khala and mine, and to combat the otherness she faced, I dreamed up Global Minds, a youth-led after-school program bridging immigrant and native English-speaking students. Together, we foster intercultural friendships and combat social isolation. Global Minds started as just 10 students gathering over pizza, but by the end of the first month, we were 100 strong, overflowing into the hallways. Soon it became clear we were not just an after-school program, but a space to belong, a family, a home. And since 2016, our home has grown quite a bit. Today, we support over 3,000 students across North America in a movement of welcoming, inclusivity, and kindness, now in partnership with the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh. At Global Minds, we dance, more like flailing, as we learn traditional styles from Iraq and Nigeria and Kenya. At Global Minds, we cry in the face of the US Muslim ban, a global pandemic, the continued injustices of our immigration system. At Global Minds, we celebrate each and every day. The small things, a good grade on a quiz, a team meeting gone right, welcoming a new student, and the big things, our students gaining citizenship, getting into college, applying for new jobs, envisioning and actualizing the kind of inclusive countries we want to live in. Together, we find empathy and compassion so we can support each other not just as peers, but as friends. If there is one thing we all have in common, it is our deep and very human need for connection. And each one of us here today has not only a shared responsibility, but a shared opportunity to make this world feel a little bit more like home. So now, I ask each one of you, where is your home? Close your eyes. Think about it. Feel it. Take that warmth and belongingness and closeness and spread it widely. Thank you.
Youth are often referred to as future leaders, denoting that they will have their chance at leadership in the near or distant future. But our next speaker puts light to that. At just 23 years old, she is Namibia's youngest Member of Parliament and one of Africa's youngest MPs. She holds a law degree from the University of Namibia and is the former Secretary General of the Namibia National Students' Organisation. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Patience Masua.
Thank you very much, Peyton. On the 17th of April in 2021, I received a call from His Excellency President Hage Geingob. As I was holding the line, waiting for His Excellency, all sorts of thoughts were running through my mind. I thought, did I tweet something? Did I do something? Why does the President of the Republic of Namibia want to speak to me? And as I answered the call, we greeted each other, and the President proceeded to say, "So you're a politician now?" And I asked His Excellency, "What do you mean I'm a politician now?" He said, "You're going to Parliament." And after a moment of silence filled with confusion, I thought maybe it's a prank. The call was in April, so, it could have been anything. And he says, yes, you are about to make history as the youngest member of parliament in the history of Namibia. Now, at the time, I was 22 years old. This was last year. And he said, but tell me, are you really just 22? Because your mind doesn't tell me that you're 22. And I'm the president, you can't lie to me. And I said, yes, I'm 22. He says, you've been doing incredible work. And ends the call by saying, prepare your family. You're serving at a national level now. You're a lawmaker, and you need to fight for the young people of this country. Now, just a year before the phone call with His Excellency, in 2020, our country had been hit by COVID-19. And at the time, I was the Secretary General of the Namibia National Students Organization. Now, with online education then being imposed on the entire education system of our country, our students and learners had been forced to migrate to an online system, some of whom have never had used a digital device in their lives, and over 50% of them not having access to reliable internet facilities. And our organization at the time, in the interest of our learners and students, had to take a very difficult decision to say to government no to online learning until we can bridge the digital divide. This at the time obviously was very radical, but our reasoning was that we're only as good as the most vulnerable learners and students during this time. So we put a halt to online learning. But government listened to us and they said yes, they came to the table. And although not every learner at the time got a device and internet, a couple of thousands did, and that made a difference. We managed to then save the academic year through those efforts, and we managed to get thousands of our students and learners the hardware and the software to be able to partake in online learning at the time. And so for someone who at the time had to fight so much with government, the Ministry of Higher Education, the Ministry of Basic Education, sometimes even the presidency, I did not think that I would be the one to be appointed into parliament a year later, to be on the side of government now. But the president told me that that is exactly what we need as lawmakers. We need resilience, and we need young people to not be spoken on behalf of, but to be on the side of lawmaking, so that from the beginning laws are tilted in favor of young people. And that was the call that changed my life. Of course, despite the nation celebrating the historic moment at the time, there was a lot of backlash. I underwent a lot of criticism from having to justify my age, my competence, my experience, everything. I had to justify to other people and sometimes to myself why I was capable and competent enough to take office at the time. And I had a lot to prove, and just in a year, we've managed to do some incredible work with young people. We have an entrepreneurship program that upscaled and upskilled 22 young entrepreneurs on a fully funded training to South Africa. We've curated and are just about to launch our hashtag 600 More Girls program. It's a financial literacy program for young girls to empower them so that they have financial skills to be able to be productive citizens in our economy. We have, just now on the floor of Parliament, we're debating the Combating of Rape Amendment Bill, which brings significant reforms for rape victims who we know are primarily women in our country. And we have launched and adopted a school program where we support government efforts of holistic education development by renovating schools and hostels to support that holistic education development, to support government's free education program. Now, all of these interventions we've done just under a year in office, and these interventions are critical for young people, specifically for young people in Namibia who form over 70% of the demographic, both the national demographic and the voter demographic. And it is truly an honor to be of service to my country and to be able to have a platform to amplify the views of young people, essentially. And if there's anything that has really shaped me out of this experience of the activist turned politician and lawmaker, it's really being on the side of truth and justice at all times. Always do what is right, and the consequences of that will be linked to your purpose and your destiny. Every single moment in my life, every single rejection, every strike that we had to go through as student leaders at the time, all of those created that readiness for me to be able to serve my country at that point in time, despite my age. The president had believed in me, a 22-year-old, to be a lawmaker, and this is the magic that happens when you empower young people. When you give young people a seat at the table, and where young people are not spoken on behalf of, but they speak for themselves, by themselves. It is just the beginning. Happy International Women's Day.
Our final speaker seeks to use her difficult start in life as motivation to succeed. Born in a refugee camp in Pakistan before moving to New Zealand at just 7 years old, she has since graduated as a Fulbright scholar with a Master of Laws from Harvard Law School. She is the first Kurd in history to graduate from Harvard Law. In 2020, she was awarded the Global Impact Award for her work fighting for justice and holding members of ISIS to account. She is the International Lawyer, Young New Zealander of the Year, and human rights activist, Rez Ghadi.
Instead of Cinderella, I was raised on stories about the many times my parents and their fellow activists risked death fighting for human rights. I heard stories of my father being arrested, imprisoned, and tortured countless times for his role in the Kurdish movement. We are the world's largest nation without a state. There are approximately 40 million Kurds worldwide with no country of our own. I didn't choose to be a refugee. I was born in a refugee camp in Pakistan. I have experienced the unpredictability of life and the constant threat of danger, not knowing when or where you're going next, or whether you'll have access to basic rights such as food, shelter, water, let alone education. There were endless mass protests. I saw people die from disease and hunger strikes. I saw authorities abuse peaceful protesters, all before I reached the age of 7. Today, an unprecedented 84 million people are forcibly displaced worldwide due to conflicts they have no say in. My mother's village was bombed with chemical weapons by the dictator Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath regime. My grandmother and 2 of my aunts were killed in that attack, and my grandfather was disabled as a result. At the age of 10, my mother became the head of her family and led her siblings by foot across the border from Iraq to Iran, seeking safety, not aware that within years they would find themselves amidst the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, and Saddam Hussein's genocidal campaign against the Kurds. In Pakistan, I was denied an education because of my refugee status. And in New Zealand, when I was in high school, a careers advisor told me that I should consider other options because law school would be too difficult for someone like me, a refugee with no history of education in the family. People like me did not finish school, let alone make it to university. I was once a refugee with dreams, and then in 2019, I became a Harvard-educated lawyer. And now I'm fighting for more refugee youth to have access to education, to reach their dreams, and to break the bias, especially young women, against whom the challenges are even further exacerbated. Through my organization, Empower, we have provided workshops and mentoring programs to over 20,000 young refugees globally. In conflict and crisis situations, higher education serves as a powerful driver for change. It shelters and protects a critical group of young people by maintaining their hopes for the future. It fosters inclusion and non-discrimination, and fundamentally, it acts as a catalyst for the recovery and rebuilding of post-conflict nations. If displaced people receive higher education, they can develop the skills necessary to contribute to building peace in their nations. Right now, more people have experienced violent conflict than at any other point in the last 30 years. With unprecedented numbers of displaced people and conflict and violence currently on the rise, we need to work together, now more than ever. New, more complex, and more sophisticated threats require imaginative and bold responses. For an overall change to materialize, the whole of society needs to play an active role. This includes having a dynamic network of players from across a diverse range of backgrounds to be engaged in innovative and robust conversations about solutions to end conflict. That means each and every one of us must take action. We cannot thrive while others are suffering. The only way forward is solidarity to overcome the biggest challenges facing the globe today. Only then we can ensure that we leave no one behind. He aha te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is the people, it is the people, it is the people.
We have taken you on a global journey, from Namibia to New Zealand, from refugee camps to the most powerful institutions on the globe. And we have heard stories of transformation and breakthrough against some of the world's biggest challenges. We hope that in each of these women you can see yourself and you can find your voice to speak up against injustice. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? But I ask you, who are you not to be? Please join me in giving a final round of applause for our incredible change makers. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you to all our speakers for raising their voices, sharing their inspiring stories, and reminding us all of the power of storytelling and the power that it holds to create the change that we desire in our societies. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be moving right along with our program, but refreshments are served in the concourse, so please do make time in the course of the sessions that we are having for the rest of the day to make sure you have refreshments. Okay, let me introduce our next session, Women Leading Industries, hosted by UPS, an official partner of Expo 2020 Dubai. We'll turn to the private sector to hear from influential women leaders who are playing fundamental roles in shaping the business landscape across the region. To begin, please help me in welcoming Ms. Laura Lane, Chief Corporate Affairs Officer of UPS, for introductory remarks, followed by a dynamic panel discussion. Round of applause.
Hello, everyone. It is so great to be here. I know that everybody was supposed to go to a coffee break, but for the women in the room, you know we never take a break. We are always figuring out a way to move things forward. And so I just am thrilled to be here today. I have to share with you all, when I thought about where I wanted to be on International Women's Day, I thought I want to be here in the United Arab Emirates. And it's because, it's because of what they have done to transform their country and their laws to empower women. Not just 3 years ago, they were at the bottom of the list in terms of women's economic empowerment, and the ministers across government said, we have to change that. 3 years later, it's now risen, and so many new opportunities are being created here. And what's beautiful is I know the Emirates are now going to be exporting this possibility around the world, and that's how we make change. And so I thought this was a great place to celebrate women's economic empowerment. So let me share a little bit about UPS. Why are we here? For one of our core values is women's economic empowerment, because we're all about moving our world forward by delivering what matters. And how do you deliver what matters? You do it by empowering women. And so we have recognized that as a company that's involved in supply chains and logistics, that we have the power to be the great equalizer across global supply chains. And we want to play a very active role in advancing women's economic empowerment, because we know it's not just a smart business decision. It's the right thing to do for creating a more equitable and just world. And so we have been doing a lot to invest in women and empower women both within our organization and outside our organization. And why do we do it? We saw the sign as you're coming in, when women thrive, humanity thrives. Well, we believe that when women succeed, the world succeeds. We know that when you invest in a woman, you're not just investing in her, you're investing in her family, you're investing in her community, and you're investing in the economy. And that leads to a better world. And so as part of what UPS does, we're putting it into practice. I am part of an executive leadership team that is now a third women. I work for the first woman CEO of a major logistics company in the world, Carol Tomei, and I promise you she's taken names and she's moving the world forward in everything that she does. We have a board of directors now, and mind you, this is in transportation and logistics. We have almost half of our board of directors as women. There's not a lot of companies that can boast that. We also have increasing numbers of women in our leadership ranks and in our front lines, serving the essential role that they play. We now are at almost 30% women in our workforce, and we've taken the pledge here in the United Arab Emirates to be one of those companies that leads by that great example and has 30% 30% women in our workforce here. We want to make that a reality everywhere in the world. And by the way, I'm saying 30% is good, but let's get to 50-50, because that's how we hold the world up. We do it together with great he-for-she men working alongside amazing powerhouse women. That's how we make the world a better place. And as I indicated, we're also investing in women. I'm super excited about all the work that we're doing for women's economic empowerment. We're teaching women through a variety of workshops everywhere around the world how to get greater access to global markets, how to get access to financing, how to understand and move products across borders, because customs processes are often so complicated. Well, UPS does that as a matter of course throughout our daily lives, and so we want to be showing other women entrepreneurs how to be doing that. We're also giving them grants so that they have the seed money to take their great ideas and take them global. We've launched 2 big programs. One's UPS Ignite, and it's focused on helping 4 million women engage in the global marketplace. And today, we're announcing our Proudly Unstoppable campaign, focused exclusively on women to help lift them up, help empower them, help them grow their businesses through coaching and mentorship, through programs that give them access to capital and additional training, because we recognize when they succeed, we all succeed. And so I want to end by saying, let's not just make this a global evolution. Let's make this a revolution. Let's find the ways that the UAE has found to accelerate its pace of change and empower more women. Let's do this together. The world is waiting for more women to come out of this pandemic and engage in the global economy again. And if we do this together, the world will rise and women will rise with it. And so with that, I'm really thrilled that UPS was able to be a part of this amazing event because we believe in the power of what women can do to transform the world. And I'm excited to be listening to the next panel that we're going to have speaking to talk about women in business that can make that difference. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lane. Now, to continue the conversation, I'd like to invite our moderator onto the stage for the next panel conversation, Mr. Thomas Billinghurst, Head of Content at Expo Worldwide.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being part of this Breaking the Bias assembly. Just before I bring out my guests for the panel that I'm hosting, I'll make a few observations myself because I've got the stage and you're all listening. The irony is not lost on me that as a man, as a white man, I'm up on here on International Women's Day talking about women in leadership roles and women being leaders. I've had it pointed out many, many times to me the last couple of weeks that I was the face leading panels about women empowerment. I'm even wearing a blue tie today just to cement the stereotype. But I think it's even more important that people like myself, men in leadership positions, take the onus, take the responsibility, and have these conversations, host them, hold them, even if at times they're a bit uncomfortable. Why is women representation in our industry so low? We need to be just as engaged as the women that we are trying to get into better positions. So what are we going to be talking about? Well, we've heard of the glass ceiling, the invisible barrier that blocks the aspirations of women from climbing to the top echelons of professionalism, of power. But gender experts argue that a more accurate metaphor is a labyrinth, a maze of complexities, detours, dead ends, a winding, unending, difficult to navigate maze. And inside this labyrinth, there's discrimination, domestic responsibilities, a lack of self-esteem, societal expectations, and many, many more obstacles. So, how do we navigate this labyrinth in the context of the corporate world and ensure more women rise to positions of leadership? We're going to have some answers. To help me find them, I'm going to introduce my panel. First up, we have Christina Struller, the Vice President of Public Affairs for ISMIA for UPS. Christina. Big fan. Francesca Gori, Managing Director, Regional Lead for Asia Pacific, Middle East and Asia at Accenture. Rupal Jobanputra, the Deputy Counsel of Group 42. And Sabina Hall, the Vice President of Technical Sales and the Chief Technology Officer for IBM Middle East and Africa. Thank you, ladies. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. So to kick things off, I like to have a little elevator pitch for everyone at the start to get comfortable and tell us their thoughts on the topic we're discussing. When it comes to the topic of women in leadership, I'd like to know, where are we and where do we need to go? Christina, coming to you first.
Thank you, Tom. So currently there are only 41 women, female CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and that is only 8.2%. And that's actually a record number. So thinking about that, it means 81% or even more leadership positions are currently held by male. So I think the direction we need to take, Tom, is clear. We need to advance women's economic empowerment and women at leadership levels, and not just because it's the right thing to do, because we know it really makes business sense too.
Excellent. Nice, tight elevator pitch. Big fan of that. Francesca, coming to you.
No, thanks a lot. And I just start, to echo what Christina said about is a business decision, is a good business decision. So as Accenture, just to give you some numbers, probably I answer with some numbers on where we were and where we are and where we want to be. So by 2025, Accenture wants to have 50-50 gender balance, full balance. At the moment, we have 45%. And we're talking about an organization that has more than 600,000 employees around the world. So it means we have more than 3,100 people, women. And when it comes to leaders, which is your question, is we want to be 30% by 2025, managing director, which is the top career level in Accenture, and we are now at 25%, which was our goal by 2020. And promotion, we are almost 30% promoting, 39% promoting managing director, female, and hiring 49% at the moment. So we are hiring 49% of women. So that's where we are, but we would like to be more. So 50-50, and then get even more women leaders in the organization. And our leader, our CEO, is a woman. So Julie Sweet, so we have also CEO of a woman. So we share with UPS to have a CEO woman.
You have
well.
one of the few at the moment.
Yeah.
Rupal, coming to you. Where are we? Where do we need to go?
So I think we've come a long way since International Women's Day was first celebrated. And we can see that by how many people are celebrating the day today around the globe. Where we need to go, in my mind, is twofold. One is making Women's Day or women in positions of leadership less of a quota. It's not a token gesture. And the second is actually empowering the women that we are putting into leadership positions so that they can actually influence change, continue to flow that down through the workplaces, through society, and then so make it really a day-to-day norm.
Excellent. Sabina.
So diversity and inclusion is a continuous journey, and it's a lot of work. In IBM, we are an organization where we started as early as 1935 when Thomas Watson promised women equal pay for equal work, all the way to have Ginny Rometty being appointed as the first CEO in 2012. So it's a long tradition, but work needs to be done. We are also, as leaders, accountable for driving a diverse culture. So I lead programs where we look particularly in hiring and finding young female talent, also with development programs to make sure women have the right programs in place when it comes to work-life balance. We all know there are multiple responsibilities we hold. We do multiple jobs at the same time. In terms of taking care of the family, of children, but also driving a career. And this really needs empowerment, encouragement, role models that they see they can do, and that we can achieve that together. So this is what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. Excellent elevator pitches. Sabina, I'm going to stay at that end of the panel with you for now, because your title is Chief Technology Officer for the Middle East and Asia, which is not a title you hear very often with a female behind it for many reasons. And you've also launched the Women Executive Sponsor program at IBM. So I want to ask if we move into technology and specific sector focuses, why did you set up this program, and what are the challenges that women are facing in the technology sector specifically?
Yeah, so I come from a country in the middle of Europe. I never had any roadblockers. I had a very supportive family, a very supportive environment, which taught me I can do whatever I want. But when I started to work in a global role, I realized not everybody is that lucky. You know, there are a lot of factors in a woman's life, which is in country, tradition, socioeconomic environment, where a lot of women don't have a voice on the table and need to fight for it. And so throughout my career, I held a lot of roundtables, and I learned, you know, and I listened to the challenges women face, which pretty much went down to role models and also to have a support network, how they can grow their career, and that they are not alone. They are not fighting alone that fight, that they have somebody to rely on, to bounce back ideas, etc. So when I became the CTO in IBM, and again in technology, there are much less women than in the overall work life. I actually asked the women, and I said, let's run a study to understand what really helps you. Because if I invent something, it might not be effective. So we did 3 things. We looked at the study, first of all, at the environment we work in. I ran a survey with women in IBM to understand how supportive is the workplace, what are the challenges they face, so we can specifically target programs to help them overcome these challenges or shape the right programs. And the third one, I wanted to give the women who worked with me on the study the opportunity to talk to female technical leaders. So we have something what is called Distinguished Engineer, IBM Fellows, which are the highest rank executive level technical trailblazers. And they were super supportive. They came out, they held these interviews with these women, and we found 4 things they recommended to be successful in their career, which I want to share with you. So one is, it's a lifelong learning journey. So be curious, keep learning, always something new. The second one, you need to be socially and technical eminent. When I look back at my career, I still wrote technical books. Today, this would be blogs, podcasts, you know, anything which gets your point of view, your reputation out in the market. And the third one is what is super underestimated, and I would say it's not just for women, is the importance of mentors and sponsors who help you build your credentials, but also to find the next role in the organization to grow your career. And the last one is really, don't forget your work-life balance. You need to find allies in your family and friends to understand if you reach for the stars and you want to go to the next level, you might need to invest more time at certain parts of your career to achieve that. And, you know, everybody's human and they get offended and then they say, well, the person is disappearing, they're out of my social circle, the family is upset. If you explain to them and say, okay, this is where I need to work, but this is where I play, and you really walk the talk, you will have great support to achieve that. And that was really the advice we give to all the technical women, and all the women actually in IBM and outside.
Really fascinating insights, especially the work-life balance, which I think we're going to come to later because it's a different dimension for men and women still today. We'll carry on this sequence and come from that end of the panel, keep working our way down here. So Rupal, I'm going to come to you next. You're the Deputy General Counsel for Group 42, which there's a long, long list, which I won't read out because we'll be here until the end of panel, of things that Group 42 do, cloud, computing, healthcare, among others. When we've spoken previously, you've said that it was approached as a startup, getting something going from the beginning. So I wonder, in terms of building a company culture, how's Group 42 ensured that women are integral to building that culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Group 42 has been on an incredible journey over the last 3 years since it started. And women have actually played quite a pivotal role in that. And as you say, it's across a variety of sectors, but at its heart, it's an artificial intelligence, cloud computing tech company. And historically, I think tech companies have a sort of predisposition to be sort of more male orientated. But at G42, there's been a real value placed on the contributions women bring to the table, especially during its growth phase. So, you know, today, one-third of employees at G42 are women, and there is a real desire to bring that up to sort of gender parity in the very near future. And a number of women actually hold key sort of strategic senior roles within the organization. Some of the examples are our Chief Human Resources Officer, who's currently driving an employee experience transformation and is sort of key to, you know, how women will be treated sort of within the workplace. We have the director of our COVID lab, who, you know, that was set up during the pandemic and was sort of a critical safeguarding measure for the UAE against COVID. We've got the head of compliance. There's me, so as Deputy General Counsel, which comes with all its challenges and all its complexities. And I'm proud to say that, you know, when I joined, we had a team of 3 lawyers. We've now grown that team to 16, and more than half are female. And that's not by, you know, conscious design, it was by chance. And as I always say, it was our good luck that we've attracted such great talent to the team, and that more than half of that is female. So, you know, there is already, even in its young sort of growth phase, an emphasis that has been placed by the leadership of G42 on the role of women and the contributions that they can bring to make a sort of real difference. And that's being now seen in sort of the hiring policies and the diversity and inclusion, you know, encouragement and reward for that, both internationally and domestically, as we sort of grow even bigger. And from a very sort of personal perspective, I've observed, you know, as a female in leadership in Group 42, I'm treated very much as an equal by my male counterparts. So it's not, there's no palpable distinction in the workplace. It's a real authenticity with which that happens, and that, you know, engenders real sort of respect. And I think that's sort of the converse and what I think we should be avoiding, to that artificiality that's created sometimes by appointing women just for the sake of appointing a woman. Here at G42, your voice is heard, your contributions are valued, and they see that, you know, as the group continues to grow, what women will contribute will actually permeate through the organization and engender a sort of a place where women can succeed, you know, diversity will flourish, and actually we'll all be a great part and play a pivotal role in G42's growth.
There's a common theme here, which I want to come to later. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but you've mentioned the chief HR officer being a female, and Francesca previously mentioned attracting more female talent. I'll come back to you. I won't ask it now to give you time to think about it. But in terms of what's the pitch to women? How are you going out to women and attracting female talent? How are you getting them into things like the technology sector? Sabina and Rupert, I'll come back to you on that, but I'll move to Francesca now. Francesca, at Accenture, one of the many things that it's known for is its comprehensive body of research. And I know that you've been looking at ways that companies can become more innovative in attracting female talent. Can you explain to us what's going on there?
Thanks a lot for the question, because I think we are all here to celebrate us as women, to celebrate International Women's Day. I think that we all believe is the right thing to do, but I think we need also some data point, and we need research, how this is going to help, how it's going to drive, you know, the successful company organization. I think, and that's what the data says. So having an inclusive workforce, having a diverse workforce, having inclusivity in your workforce is driving innovation. It's because the employee, they can be at their best when they work. So they don't feel judges, they don't feel, actually they believe that they're going to bring their own value. So this is clear, and this is clear also from many data that innovation is one of the key driver enabler to successful company. And another very important, actually, data point that was very interesting about this research that we did, which is about delivering on the promise of the sustainability. So sustainability, where, of course, gender inclusion is an essential pillar of it, and the goal number 5 on SDG is. So some of the data show that the organization, the company that have higher rating between 2013 2020, they were having margin and higher operating margin, 3.7%, and actually also 2.7% of more annual revenue. So this is a clear data in terms of how sustainability really drive business outcome. And that's where we need to, I think we need to take a knowledge of it. So it's the right thing to do, is probably the best things to do, but actually is a business imperative.
Is there, you mentioned involving more women in workplaces being a driver of innovation and having a direct impact on bottom line and creativity and revenues. Is there a reason beneath that other than diversity, inclusion? Are there any other drivers to that profitability, that creativity that we're seeing in workplaces?
Well, it's definitely so the inclusion is about, of course, about everything. So it's about gender, it's about age, it's about background. I mean, just to mention, I think we all experienced the session before where we had incredible talent, young ladies here. And before, even in terms of background, we have somebody come and singing and giving the power of women, right? So I think this is actually what we are also thinking every day in Accenture, different background, more women, different talent, and age and diversity, and last but not least, ethnicity as well. And so this is really a must in an organization in terms of innovation.
Fantastic. Christina, UPS, a company with global reach, both within the company and outside of the company. How are you using that platform and your influence beyond your immediate employee circle to drive positive change?
Great. Maybe I start internal, but as well I want to add on what Francesca has said. So I think it's really important to have this diversity, and it looks different in every part of the world. And I think if you have that color when it comes to your leadership team and you have different people from different backgrounds, that's how your customers look like as well. So really can attract more customers because they really like to have somebody who looks like them as well, right? So I think when it comes to internal at UPS, really the key is to kind of create that environment which lets everyone thrive, women and everyone around them. And I don't know if you are aware, but actually at UPS in our 115 years history, we started hiring women quite early on in that journey. So the first female operation staff and drivers were actually hired during World War II. So quite long ago, even though we are quite a male-dominated industry. And I think the key is as well that we are really committed to a very transparent and inclusive governance structure, which is incredibly important in order to drive these key initiatives. And I think as well, Laura touched on some of them, but I just want to repeat because I think it's important to understand that 1/3 of our C-suite executive leadership team is actually female, and Laura Lane being one of the 4 top female executives at UPS. 46% of the entire board of directors at UPS is as well occupied by women. And what we're very proud of, like similar to Francesca, we have Carol Tomey, who joined us 1st of June in 2020 as one of the very few female Fortune 50 CEOs. And what she did when she came to join UPS, she right away put in place that everyone gets paid the same for the job they're doing, which is incredibly important to kind of have this equity pay throughout the organization. As well, under her leadership, I mean, it's not just the way she is as a female CEO, but as well the results show it. And only in 18 months, our stock price doubled. So looking outside at UPS, we're really fortunate to have fantastic government partners around the world. And just here, we signed recently a pledge with the UAE Gender Balance Council. And that pledge really means that we are committed in the UAE to at least have 30% of female leadership in the workforce. But our aim is obviously much higher than that. As well, we partnered with WeConnect International to set up, as one of the 3 founding members, WeConnect International UAE, where we really help drive money into hands of female suppliers in the UAE. And we have a fantastic program across the world, and it's called the UPS Women's Exporters Program. And this is an amazing initiative you can plug and play in every country, and that supports female-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. And what we do is we provide capacity building, we provide resources, mentorship, our logistics know-how, and we provide that free of charge to female entrepreneurs for them to be able to access the trade arena, for them to be able to actually export and access global markets. And what is the benefit on that? First of all, it allows them to increase their profits. And what allows that? They can hire more people. And at the same time, they're actually giving back to communities. And lastly, as well, they have the power in order to support their own families. And I think that's very important.
I love the point that you raised right at the beginning about diversity looking different wherever you are in the world. And as a segue, it brought me back to listening to Her Excellency Shama Al-Mazroui's speech on here earlier today when she used the wonderful analogy of the Snow White refrain. And she said she was asking the wrong questions for such a long time. It wasn't mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fill in the blank of them all. She changed the way she was asking those questions, and she said, am I being the person that I want to see tomorrow? Am I looking at the same person today that I want to see reflected in the mirror tomorrow? About being true to ourselves. And those personal anecdotes actually brings me to what I really want to get to the grind of here. We've talked about the corporate environment. I'd love to know more about the personal environment. We've had the pitches, we've put our companies out there. Now I want to get to know the ladies behind these experiences. Rupal, I know one thing we've touched on, work-life balance as a mother, as someone with a legal background who is now driving this legal arm of Group 42. What is juggling work and life like for you? How do you strike that balance?
It's a very interesting question and one that I've thought about a lot over the last few years. And I think I'd like to start just by saying very openly and honestly that the struggle is real. The juggle is extremely challenging. Motherhood, career in a fast-paced environment. You know, I go to sleep most nights wondering which ball I've dropped or which one I haven't paid enough attention to. And I think that will probably be similar to many women here who are doing both of those things. For me, there have been three key factors, I think, that have helped me find balance and you know, be able to do the juggling. And one of them is work-life balance. And the reason that one of those is work-life balance is I've changed my approach to it. So I think work-life balance is something we all talk about a lot. But what does it actually mean? Is it a 9-to-5 job? Is it, you know, weekends without stress? You know, in this day and age where the lines are sort of slightly blurred between home and work, how do we really get that? And I think when we change our approach to what it means and what it means to us, you know, you can sort of be more at peace with the idea. So for me, work-life balance is embodied by flexibility. So if I can have a role where I can be a mother and, you know, do my career, I feel like I have achieved work-life balance, even if I'm not working set days, set timings, etc. So, you know, if I can go to school performances and bake birthday cakes and do all the other great things that come with motherhood, but yet perform to the high standards and expectations I have on myself, you know, I go to sleep a little easier each night. Now, you know, G42 has done, I'm not plugging again, but just as an example,
We did the
G42
plugs earlier, we moved on. Talking about you now.
G42 has actually embraced a hybrid working policy, which I think has been great. It's really helped everyone, but especially women like me, find that balance a little easier. And it's also given us time to sort of concentrate on physical and mental well-being, which are as important as being a good mother and as being a good lawyer. So, you know, once you come around to thinking, what does work-life balance mean to you? How do you get there? And then how do you help the environment that's around you find that for you? You know, that to me is a way to help deal with the juggle. And I think G42 has recognized that giving flexibility will engender sort of longer-term commitment and will ultimately achieve better results. So that's key factor one. Key factor two for me has been, and I think you touched on it, a very strong support system. So I've got a husband and family who are probably more ambitious for me than I am for myself. I've got great peers and colleagues, some of whom have become very close personal friends that have supported me through every step of my journey. And I've been lucky to work for great, you know, people. I work today for a general counsel who is, you know, not only given me the confidence to grow in my career in the way that I'd want to, but also mentored me as to how to find balance for the ambitions I have for my family as well. And in case you're wondering, he's a male. So that's, you know, it's been wonderful to have that mentoring across my sort of the last 2 years. And the third factor for me is role models. And again, I think you touched on this. Like, it's important to have role models. It's important to see that other people have walked the difficult path and succeeded. It makes it a little bit easier to then follow those footsteps. And, you know, I've been fortunate to have, you know, such role models within the professional setting, within a personal setting, and that's always been very encouraging for me. And I really hope that one day, you know, I can be a role model to others, but particularly to my daughter, who I hope when she grows up will see that actually you can have it all. It's just your perspective.
Fabulous. I love the fact that you dropped in mentorship as an important strand there, because Francesca, I know it's something that's very important to you. You run a 9-month global mentorship program with Accenture.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how the importance for you as a human being that is pushing mentorship for young women leaders, and the impact that you're seeing it have on young women?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, because I believe, thinking about also the question you raised to, is role modeling, I think, is an important element on how the motivation as a woman, we bring also to our organization, but also to community, your broader community as well. So we have several programs in Accenture in terms of women empowerment, including for our supply chain like UPS. But talking about this program, which is one of the flagship of Accenture, so it's called Insight program. It's a 9-month program where our talent female from all over the world, from across the business of Accenture, they are nominated and they participate. And one of the more important objectives, actually, of the program is to help them to go through their career pathway. So I think what is one of the elements that we found out during the program, and I've been doing this program already now 2 years, being an MD coach, together with many other MD coaches around the world, is the fact that one of the first questions we ask at the very beginning of the program to our senior managers, so we're talking about already people that are executive level, right? So we ask, do you want to become an MD, a managing director, which is our top career level? And actually, surprisingly for me, at the beginning of this program, many of the women, they say, not really. So it was not, we were not reaching the, definitely the average of the women. At the end of night program, almost 90%, they answer yes. So it goes to the motivation. So I think for us as women, we need to reflect as well, right? What we need to give to the other women to understand that they can make it. So the motivation that they can find. So we have a workshop and tools, and we give tools to them about branding, purpose, but self-limiting belief. So the more we talk about work-life balance, which, by the way, is essential, but it's for parents. It's not just for mother. I think work-life balance is important, but it's for both parents, right, I guess. So which actually brings me another important topic that we are definitely also talking every day in Accenture, which is about what we allow to our men to do, to be with their family, and also to take the advantage, because many legislation now is given to father also, but they're not taking it. So what is the question behind that, right? So Insight, I think, has been amazing, has been a gift for me also as an MD coach, because make me realize on the importance of many topics, and go to some metrics as well on the program. So many of the women in the program, actually, they were much more better positioned to get promoted. Also speed, they were promoted in a accelerating, so allow us to accelerate, because I think our problem as many organizations that we want to accelerate the quality, the gender equality in our organization. We cannot wait to take the time that needs to take. We need to accelerate. So acceleration was one of the outcomes of the program. So they were able to get MD in a speed way, higher rate, but also retention. So one of the important elements is to retain talent in the organization. So every talent, and also especially when you have some of the minority, which unfortunately, even though we are 45% women, which is a pretty important number, somehow we are still, minority, right? We're not 50-50, so we want to get there.
Very, very quickly, because we are beginning to run out of time, and I've got so many questions still to ask. Francesca, you moved from Milan to the Middle East about 6 years ago. The same program you were running or involved in, is there any difference in women's response from Europe to the Middle East to that question, do you want to become a managing director?
Not really. I think it's pretty much similar, I would say. So there is not such a difference, I would say. Probably, if you think about North America, maybe it's slightly different, but across APAC, and Africa, Middle East, and also Europe, I would say, is much more similar. I see, though, differences if I look back years. So I think we have been advanced a lot. Also as a woman, we need to do more. And even in this country, we have been doing great. So I think this country is, I think Laura touched upon and is doing great in terms of policy and people. We need to do more as well.
Excellent. Sabina, talking about moving from one place to another, you've had an international career. I think from memory, it's 3 or 4 continents in the last 14 years. Can you tell us, from a personal perspective, the challenges that you've seen in the technology sector for women across those different demographics, across those years?
Sure. So as I said, I grew up in Austria, as a very small country in the heart of Europe. And back then, I was one of 4 women graduating in the technical field. So I was kind of used to be all by myself. And this is, I think, the common theme in tech across Europe, mostly till today. It's probably getting better, but still very few women in technology. And when I started to work on projects in the Middle East and North Africa, I started to find so many more women in technology jobs, in technology leader positions, that at some point I started to actually try to understand what is the difference between Europe and the Middle East and North Africa, because there is a perception or a misperception on the role of women in this region. And what I found is that actually there are way more female students in the STEM-related field. Now, if you look at the Gulf region, it's between 50 and 77% women graduating in STEM, versus if you look at Europe, North America, it's somewhere between 15 and 20%. So the talent pool is much smaller. And I really felt welcome, and I'm probably your best ambassador in Europe when people say, oh, you live in the Middle East, isn't that difficult? Can you drive a car? I'm getting really silly questions, and I say, yes, it's all great, and there are so many more women I work with, and we collaborate. I call it sometimes the sisterhood, we come together, we have fun, we exchange, we support each other, which I haven't seen in Europe. To be fair, I haven't been working in Europe for the past 20 years, so I hope it has improved. But what I hear from my friends, not. And when I did the study I mentioned before, we looked at all the different data sources, and I found something which is called the gender equality paradox, which was released by the World Economic Forum, which said actually countries which are closest to the gender parity, like in Europe, having a much bigger gap when it comes to technology. And so I actually got proof points on the data that what I feel is happening here in the Middle East, that you are so many more women around you working together, is actually based on data, is not just my personal perception. And I think that's great. What it takes is really how do I attract female talent in the workforce, to bridge from academia. A lot of women I meet are in academic networks, are super excited, but we also need to make sure as a corporation or any large corporation, how do we attract them? How do we showcase also to them the programs we drive to foster female talent to grow their career? And this is not just about technical, this is in general. And also a lot of discussions I have in the past 2 to 3 years is also, what is the corporate responsibility we have in terms of driving, social good programs, tech for good programs? What's a company's footprint or agenda when it comes to sustainability? Because young talent is not as much anymore, I'm going to work for the company who pays the most, but also looking at, what's their goal in life? What are their priorities, what are their ethics they are looking at to join a company. So, and this takes a lot of time, but it's very exciting. I was lucky I was picked up, in a great company when I graduated, and it's my time now to give back, and I really enjoy that.
You have, Christina, female trailblazers, such as Laura Lane, female CEO. What are the tangible benefits that you have seen at UPS with greater women representation?
Yeah, I think it's really, personally, when you just consider the last 2 years where we kind of mainly were working virtually and connecting through a virtual world, I think that's really when I recognized the power of female leadership and how it actually drives a company. And it starts from the top. I mean, we mentioned Carol, who joined. I think one of the most important things she put in place right in the beginning was actually our purpose. Moving our world forward by delivering what matters. And that changed it all, because that gave some purpose to all our 540,000 employees, something meaningful, something tangible. That's really the reason why we do what we do so well every single day. And I think just considering as well, having a different mindset around the table, bringing women into the discussion, allowing other partners to join, giving this diversity, the background differences, the views, having these discussions, even though thousands of miles away when you're in a virtual environment. I think that's where women just really excelled for me in the last 2 years, and that really helped. And I think I'm looking as well at many different statistics when it comes to women economic empowerment and the benefit it can drive. And that's why we as well have these different initiatives in place. I mean, we talked about the Women's Exporters Program, but as well about internal business resource groups. And we actually have around 10,000 business resource groups, we call them BRGs. And one of them is called the Women Leadership Development Group. And that's really a group where we invite every employee to be part of, to share, to come to the table, to be part of something where they can really engage with other employees. They might not have the opportunity other than that, because they might be working in operations, or might be in finance, or might be in the legal department, to really get connected and as well get to share their experiences. I think these kind of environments are critical. And why is it important? Because as well, statistics show if we would be able to close the gender gap globally, then we can add $28 trillion to the economy. And I think $28 trillion speaks by itself.
Not insignificant amount of money.
Exactly. And that's why we really try to get more females into leadership positions and on boards, because when women are serving on boards, the financial results are just extremely higher than if you have a company with no women or just a few women. So I think there's a lot of benefits, and it's important for all of us to kind of drive that advancement of women on top leadership positions.
Absolutely. I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I'm getting looks from people on the sidelines with wide expressions and very high eyebrows. So I will wrap it up with one question for all of you in the same way that we started, with something that I'm particularly passionate about, which is language. So if we had a 60-second elevator pitch at the start, this is going to be a shorter elevator ride, and it's going to be 30 seconds down the line, and then the guys can calm down. We've had Choose the Challenge last year for International Women's Day. This year is Break the Bias. My question to you is, where do you want to see this language go? And is this language helpful for where we are at the moment? Christina, I'll start with you. 30 seconds, remember.
You have break, you have challenge. It clearly defines there is still some more work to be done. There is an issue. And I think instead of overturning, we actually have to kind of change it in order to make sure that we drive women economic empowerment and that we actually achieve the SDGs. I think International Women's Day is just such a great opportunity and platform for us all to meet and to kind of reinforce our commitment in order to get to the goal and get everyone else involved. Because I think that it's clear, if women thrive, humanity thrives, and it just helps our economies, our societies, and our communities. So it's a win-win-win.
When women thrive, societies thrive. Absolutely. Francesca.
Yeah, I mean, the language, I like your last question, because it's really what give me the sense, right? I think the sense it give me action. So break means something happened and you really do it. So I think that is an immediate image that comes to my mind. So the stakeholders expect business to step up. So we have research also for consumer asking organizations to have long-term sustainability. We really believe that sustainability is going to be like the future digital, for example. So we know that every business is digital now, right? So we believe actually that every organization is going to be a sustainable business. So let's act, let's make sure that we're going to make it, and let's make sure that the gender parity is going to come soon and with the right acceleration that we all need to bring.
Step Up would be a nice one if it wasn't already a film, I think. Okay. Not that I've seen it. Rupal.
I think the language is helpful, especially in a world where there's hashtags and social media is so prevalent, because it raises awareness. But for me, it's more than the hashtags. It's moving past that. It's now navigating the phase that those phrases have led to. So it's really now, empowering the women that have been part of the overturning of the status quo. It's giving them the voice, it's valuing their contributions, so that actually, we'll move past those hashtags. It will become part of the fabric of our lives.
Fabulous. Sabina, wrap it up for us.
Yeah, so as we discussed, we have to make sure we include the next generation to come. So I think hashtags are clearly something which stays in one's mind. So I'm absolutely for these short slogans because it sticks to somebody. And I would say, with let's break the bias, let's make it happen. It has to be part of our mindset day in, day out.
There you go. United Nations, if you're listening, let's make it happen. That's your next hashtag for 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank me and welcome me and thanking these fantastic guests.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers, moderators, and panelists for shedding light on the labyrinth of barriers that women professionals still face and what is needed to increase women's representation at all levels and in all sectors. In our next segment, we're going to move from the world of business to the world of art and explore the outsized impact of artists to break the bias. Hosted by Dignified Storytelling and the Women's Pavilion, this session includes highlights from the recent We the Women Festival, making it the first ever female-led music festival to ever take place in the Middle East. And this took place at Expo 2020 over the last 2 days. After this short video, we are also excited to have an exciting live performance by El Sara and the Nubatons and Alawallah Shivani. Thank you.
On my chai tea. Baby, I tell you one night, Habibi, المانجا والتفاح. Habibi, I tell you one night, Habibi, I tell you one night, مساء. كسر حقد الإنسان. Because of the way my light shine, just leave it to the cosmos and trust that in due time I'll be done. Come to the pennies, the nickels, and the dimes, cause the whole squad on the come up. Oh yeah, I was doing loops, jumping hoops, constant rewind, as if time was linear and glorifying the grind. From backflip to rhymes, on the A-line to international headlines. Ala Walla Al Sara aligned in a vortex, on a quest to oneness. But don't fret, I got flow. So no sweat, we drip from the inside out. Double thread, double thread, double thread, yeah. Triple black and my main double XL. See me flipping the single eye to the weed, cause that's how we XL. hell. If you got more than one face, I can look and tell they call me blue high. Digo blue high, yeah. Emotion is high. We stay in motion, take it away from the equation, and you causing commotion. Emotion is high. We stay in motion, take it away, take it away, take it away. Take it away, take it away. In a vortex, on a quest to oneness, but don't fret, I got flow. When the compass, so no sweat. Yes.
قلبك شيرة قلبك شيرة قلبك شيرة قلبك شيرة يا وردة مستني الريح قلبك شيرة يا وردة مستني الريح.
You are listening to the sounds of Alawala, Al-Sada. Happy Women's Day, everybody. Thank you so much. Yes, yes. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to the Dignified Storytelling team, and a special thank you to our wonderful artists, Sarah and the Nubatones, as well as Aluwala Shivani. In this next series of Spotlight Talks, we're going to be keeping the conversation going on what it takes to break the bias and what it takes to navigate the traditionally male-dominated world of music. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome onto the stage our moderator, Ms. Hinda Louise, Senior Vice President of International Participants and the Women's Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai. Please also help me in welcoming a pioneering singer, composer, and poet. She was recognized by the United Nations as one of the most important singers in the Middle East for her efforts to promote culture and authenticity through her work. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Jahida Webe.
Hello. Hi, nice meeting you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. What a great show we just witnessed. But the show's not over. At least the conversation is not over.
Yeah.
We have an amazing, amazing singer, composer,
Thank you.
poet,
Thank you.
actress with us today. Jahida Wahbi,
No.
it's really a pleasure and an honor for us to welcome you here. Your bio was very briefly mentioned, but you have been recognized by institutions like the UN, like the League of Arab States. You have been called the priestess of the stage and a poet of the song and its educator. And I know your art is something that is deep. It is comes from a very meaningful place. And
From the heart.
Exactly, from the heart. And speaking of the heart, I want you to tell us about how you see the issue that we're trying to tackle today.
Allow me to say صباح الأنثى أيها العالم. اسمحوا لي أن أنتهز هذه المناسبة التي نكرم خلالها المرأة أينما كانت في العالم لأقول إن نظرتنا لأنفسنا نحن النساء هي التي تحدد نظرة العالم بأسره لنا. أحيي فيكم رجالا ونساء تلك الأنثى، أنثى الخير والعطاء والتضحية، الأنثى الأم الحبلى بالوعود، الممطرة والخصبة كأرض الأندلس، كأرض بلادي بلادك، وكأرض فلسطين، والتي تنبت معها النعمة حيثما تحركت، تلك التي تختزن معنى البركة والقيمة العليا في رسم مسارات الحياة، والتي على شدة وجعها وطحنها تناضل كي تبقى قمح الحياة وخبزها المعجون للأجيال الآتية، الحارس الأمين للذاكرة وأرشيف الخرائط المفقودة. I'm pleased to be here with you to celebrate Women's Day and to declare that each day is a Women's Day. Allow me to take this opportunity and say that the way we see ourselves as women will determine how others will see us. I salute the female in every one of you, women and men, the female bursting with goodness, generosity, and sacrifice, the mother, the woman full of abundant promises like the lands of my country, your country, the land of Andalusia, Palestine, Iraq, and every land in our nation. I salute the female who makes the blessings and values proud wherever she sets her foot. Despite the severity of her pain, she struggles to preserve the core values of life for future generations. She struggles to remain the voice of conscience, the voice of truth, and the guardian of all our memories. Today, we face only two possibilities. Either we will be the heroine of our lives, or we will be the victims. We always shed light on strong, independent women, and we disregard the women of our Arab world who are victims of wars, injustice, hunger, society, oppression, violence, and terrorism, on the pretext that we have no power against the major conspiracies that are being hatched. However, we have two ways to light the way. We can either be the source of light or the mirror that reflects it.
Wow. Wow.
My message was always and remained the noble art, الموسيقى العالمة, la musique savante, la musique qui voit, qui illumine, الموسيقى التي ترى وتنير, which illuminates the darkness in our world from the very beginning and on my own. I wanted to display to the world through my voice, my art, and my songs, the issues of our society in support of social responsibility and the human beings wherever they are. I desperately wanted to contribute as much as possible to raising the level of hope, positivity, and beauty through my voice. أن أحقق كينونتي. I also wanted to help establish ways that protect the public taste and defend the right to live a decent life, to create together a sustainable culture that wards of ignorance, fanatism, and extremism in our society, help differentiate between the good and the bad. Despite the disappointments that we face, despite the setbacks and humiliation, I want to be the voice of courage, dignity.
Beautiful.
Every moment is female.
That's so beautiful and inspiring, and your words give me hope. if only we understood our femininity in that way.
Yes, yes.
And I think that what you're saying is that art is a tool.
Yes.
Right? How do we make space for more women to carry their femininity proudly and to have the courage to express themselves, to use the arts as not something that sits on the side, right, of change and change makers,
yes,
but something that is transformative?
Yes.
Do you feel we are there yet?
I think yes. I remember here an extract from a poem from Adonis telling أجمل ما تكون أن تخلخل المدى أجمل ما تكون أن تخلخل المدى بعضهم الآخرون بعضهم يظنك النداء بعضهم يظنك الصدى. How beautiful that we shake the horizon, and the others, some think you are the call, others think you are the echo. أجمل ما تكون أجمل ما تكون أن تخلخل المدى والآخرون بعضهم يظنك النداء بعضهم يظنك صدى. This is from Adonis.
Wow. I want to listen to you all day sing and do a cappella.
I will say some things about your questions. I think that the art and the music is your means of expression.
Mm-hmm.
The expression is very, very important. The art is your healer.
Absolutely.
Is our healer. A way to connect with your soul and understand what it really wants, regardless of what society has imposed on you. So, be strong. This is my message. Be strong, be you, and 10 copies of you. Art allows you to have more than one soul. To be more than a beautiful woman. And at the same time, music and art makes your voice heard and visible. Art liberates you through the positivity of creativity. So express yourself, express your opinion, and be active in decision making. Balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayer pour toujours, je repars à zéro. أعيدي وأعيدي وأعيدي كما نعيد في البروفا في البروفات. Keep on repeating as we do in rehearsal so you can be more forceful. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal. Tout ça m'est bien égal. ولا شي لا ما بندم عشي قهر الأيام زهر الأحلام وكل شي صار ولا كأنه صار لا ولا شي لا ما بندم عشي كنست الماضي ورجعت حفياني من كل الذكريات.
Wow.
This world cannot be better through a remote control. But we can contribute to making better, but being close and grateful for our expression way.
I think I fully agree with you. I think expression is so important, expressing yourself.
I express it too much today.
No, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I think we should all take a page from your book and stand in our own power, stand in our femininity, and really be as grand as we can. Right?
يضطهد الرجل المرأة لأنه لا يستطيع أن يكونها. Man oppresses woman because he cannot be her.
So if we were to talk about these characteristics, right? Today we see there's a lot of inequality.
Yes.
We see that no country in the world has achieved or closed its gender gaps.
Yes.
And we, women and men, are constantly, we're trying, right?
We are trying, yes.
Trying. What do you think is, if you had a magic wand to stop this oppression, to change things, what do you think that silver bullet would be?
The culture, the sustainable culture. I think we have to unite to reestablish, we must unite to reestablish the female presence in all fields, especially in art. I told you, because the art rebuilds our vision of the world and the vision of man, of the world, of us. Art and education humanizes our relationship with each other. The magic is in the art. Art inspires us. It builds bridges between each of us, both between women and men. We must provide opportunity for them, empower them, enhance their confidence in themselves, improve education, break out of stereotypes in dealing with women and reconnect with the core values that is innate in women. The values innate in the woman, because that's such an empathy, the family, the peace, the equality, sustainability, democracy, and tolerance. The woman is all of this, is the earth, the mother of the magic, the mother of the beauty.
Do you have anything else to sing for us?
No. I just want to tell you, stay magnificent, stay passionate. The passion is also the magic.
I have one last question before we go. Jahida, you are an important artist. Do you feel that in the cultural, in the artistic space, there is an expected stereotype of women?
Yes.
How do we how do we get rid of that?
معاناة كبيرة. Because they took the woman in this era of art to the commercial way. المرأة أخذت إلى التسليع وكأنها سلعة للأسف. أنا وحاولت منذ قديم مهنتي أن أغير هذه النظرة إلى المرأة بما أقدم من أغنيات. تعبت كثيرا، كان هناك عوائق كثيرة أمامي، لكني تخطيتها بأنني صقلت موهبتي. I worked on all what I have, my voice, my conscience, my I learn and learn. I make studies in literature, in music, in every kind of studies that can help me to flourish. I think this is very important, the culture.
Yeah.
This way, هذه الطريقة خلتني أن أعرف كيف أتخطى المطبات في مسيرتي، وهذا ما أقوله للمرأة، أن تبتعد عن فكرة أنها سلعة.
Exactly. This is really important. I just
Yes.
wanted to. Women are not commodities.
Yes.
And this is what we see in the arts and culture space a lot of time. They're reduced, our images are reduced as if we were commodities.
Yes.
And this is what Jahida, I think, is leaving us with,
yes.
to remember that you can be who you are, you can continue to expand yourself, to learn, to flourish, and not be reduced to anything like a commodity.
Yes.
I think we're out of time. Thank you. Jahida, it's such a pleasure. You have inspired me and filled my soul today, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you, Ms. Jaida Webe and Ms. Hinda Louise for your inspiring words indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we now turn to the world of sports, an industry that transcends language to connect people across the world and has the power to transform societies across the globe. To start, let's hear from players at Manchester City in their own words.
Expo 2020 in Dubai has a women's pavilion, and I think that's amazing for them to be able to highlight the successes of females and to be able to share those stories and inspire the next generation. I think for me, growing up wanting to play football, playing against boys,
it wasn't, I guess, common, or it wasn't something they liked.
You get to a certain age where you have to stop playing with boys.
I think it's all part and parcel of what makes you robust.
Once you proved yourself on the field, all of a sudden there was a huge amount of respect.
The first time this one boy said, "Oh, I'm going to tackle that girl so hard," just put it straight for his legs. The manager on the side was like, go to the girl, mark the girl."
I think I would tell my younger self always to trust my gut instinct and to back myself.
I once got told, if you don't believe in yourself, how do you expect others to believe in you?
Whatever you want to be like, you can do it. It's good to celebrate women doing great things, and actually we make the world go around.
Whether it's being a mum, a sister, all across, I think there's so many amazing female stories. It's important to highlight those successes.
Women need to be appreciated as much as anyone in the world, no matter who you are. Every woman brings something different and something valuable to the world.
Break the bias this International Women's Day at Expo 2020 Dubai.
Now, to take this conversation further, please help me in welcoming Ms. Noura Al-Mazri, former captain and goalkeeper of the UAE women's national team.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. I'm really happy to be here, and I would like to speak about women's football in UAE and how it started and where we would like to be in the future. Women's football in the UAE has started with a small group of girls playing in a club in Abu Dhabi, and then they decided to speak to the GM that we want a proper football team. So he took our idea, and the president was His Highness Sheikh Hazza, and then His Highness gave his blessing, and in no time we just started, and we have a full facility of football. So we were the only team playing that time, and we were representing the UAE, the only club. So we started playing tournaments abroad because there was no clubs in the UAE back then. That was in 2004. After that, like we were like competing against national teams, and we are only a club. But because there was no clubs, we were they call us the national team. After that, we participated in the first international tournament, which was the West Asia tournament. We won it against one of the strongest teams. That tournament pointed the spotlight in the women's football, and from there, His Highness gave the instruction to form the Women's Football Committee. After that, we had more clubs, formed women's football teams. We started our first league, a local competition, which is running until now. We have 8 teams each season. And we have a league, competitions, and different age groups as well that created a big base to select more players for the national team. So from 20 girls who wanted to play football to over 200 players now. Our achievements: we won the WAF tournament, which is the West Asia tournament, twice. We have international referees, female referees. 2 of them are internationally. They have the international certified referees. We have coaches. Coach Horia is the first Arab coach to be selected in the international female directing program. So we achieve a lot in a small time. If you see from 2004 until now, it's just 15 or 16 years. And then the women's national team as well participated for the first time in the AFC qualifiers in 2016. And last October also they participated for the second time. The result was better. Of course, we aim for better results. We aim to qualify to the AFC qualifiers and play in the AFC Cup. We aim, this one in the future, of course, we aim to qualify as well to the World Cup. We have the talents, we have the facilities, the government is really supporting. So I think we are capable, and UAE women are capable of achieving a lot of things in football. So the future is bright, I think. Even FIFA had this saying once. They said the future is feminine. So nowadays, the women's football all over the world is developing. They're equalizing the females' wages with the male wages. There are professional women playing in other countries professionally. And what we have right now, we have 2 girls. They've been selected to play in 2 Spanish clubs in Qadish and Valencia. They will be going soon after they finish their school. So we have the platform, we have everything that takes that the sport in the UAE is thriving. And we would like to tell the world that the Arab woman is capable of playing and achieving and winning trophies. So thank you. As all of you here are successful women, we have in sports also successful women, and we would like to send our message through sports and through our achievements. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we would like you to one day to come and watch us play.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Noura. Ladies and gentlemen, we now will turn our attention to the big screen and we'll just hear from some of the leading athletes that we've had grace our shores here at Expo 2020 Dubai.
Sports have the power to transform lives. Sports play a pivotal role in improving health and wellness for individuals and their communities. Sports help to unify. Yet, bias still holds too many women and girls back from participation. Career paths for women athletes are still limited by lack of equal pay, which is still an issue in almost all sports. Funding, sponsorship, media coverage, and resourcing of male sports continues to outbalance women's sport. But there is hope. Expo has been privileged to welcome some of the world's greatest athletes. Women who have paved the way for others. Women who are the best in their field. Women who are investing in their communities. Here are what a few of them had to say about women and sports.
I think for me, when I was young, I realized that I was fighting this individual battle, a bit of a silent battle myself, when it came to being a woman in sport, a young black Muslim woman in sport. And, you know, that silent battle became a bigger one when I realized that I'm not the only one fighting it. So, you know, I wanted to create a space that allowed young Muslim women, young black women, young BAME women to have the opportunity to play football in a safe, comfortable environment.
We've had some incredible women in our sport who have really pioneered and have put our sport onto a level where, you know, we are equal at every event almost. And you know, Billie Jean King is our main fighter. You know, she started this from, you know, over almost 50 years ago, and to be able to see the positive and the changes that she's made. Venus Williams has been incredible for us as well, fighting, you know, against the tournament directors to try to get equal prize money for the players. It's amazing to see that, you know, young girls now or players who get to a level where, you know, their prize money is equal, is higher than it's ever been.
As I became a father, I have 6 kids, 4 of whom are girls. I realized that the message that is being sent to young girls, that they have an opportunity, maybe the same way as guys, and encouragement and something to look forward to or aspire to, I think is a great thing. So, you know, I think ultimately, in maybe not too distant future, tennis will be just one circuit, like men's and women's, and you won't have any separate tournaments. And I think that that's the next step, and I believe that that's going to be something that is going to be setting a good example for other sports.
It's not important, it's what you do today and tomorrow, and work hard, think about the next step always.
Lots of key lessons. Big one is to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, you can't expect anybody else to believe in you. And if you decide on a course that you want to go on, if you set yourself a goal to become as good as you can at that, you want to be open to learning, you want to find out as much as you can about it. And if you can find somebody who you admire, who's really good and experienced at doing that already, don't be afraid to ask them if you can shadow them, go and work with them, work experience, because the quickest and easiest way to get good at something is to work alongside somebody who is already great. So find someone else, and usually it will be a woman.
I am inspired as a big brother to a 12-year-old sister that her future certainly will be one of shared equality amongst her peers. Thank you to Ms. Noura Al-Mazuri for sharing your insights with us, to Manchester City players and all other athletes that have spent time with us here at Expo 2020 Dubai. Last but certainly not least, we're going to hear about the intersection of gender and one of the most pressing issues of our time, that is the climate crisis. Our next speaker will help us to showcase what an effective gender response to the climate crisis should look like and the UAE's plans for COP28. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Dr. Nawal Al-Hossani, Permanent Representative of the UAE to the International Renewable Energy Agency.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Happy International Women's Day. It is actually an honor and a great privilege to be with you here and to be with this amazing lineup of speakers. You know, we heard extremely articulate but very impressive thoughts on the importance of women's role in many sectors: diplomacy, industry, music and art, sports. And now we shift gear. Let's speak about climate change. I have been often asked the question, is it really, do women really are more impacted with climate change? Aren't we all impacted in the same way? Of course, if we are gonna look at the catastrophic consequences of climate change, that if we didn't do much, in conclusion, we're gonna reach there, yes, we would be all impacted in the same sad, extremely dangerous way. Maybe some more than others. So, what I'm going to tell you today is why women are not only more affected by climate change, but why they have the potential to actually turn the tide of climate change more so than our male counterparts. So, firstly, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, a fact. Women has been historically underrepresented in policymakers' positions and decision makers when it comes to the roles that can enact laws or policies related to climate change. And where did this get us? Let me share with you some headlines that we've seen in the news and in the media recently. Climate change is harming the planet faster than we can adapt. Time is running out to avert a harrowing future. Code red for humanity, climate crisis caused by human activity, major climate change is inevitable and irreversible. So you get the picture. This is where we are today. You know, Albert Einstein said something, he's a genius, he's a man, but he's a genius. He said something that the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So according to Einstein, the way we have pursued climate action until now, without involving more women in the decision and policy makers process, is simply madness. So, secondly, research, and that scientific research, shows us that women are more disproportionately impacted by climate change than men, especially those on the front lines in climate vulnerable communities and in low-income areas. UN figures indicate that up to 80% of displaced by climate change are women. Roles as primary caregivers and providers of food and fuel make them more vulnerable when flooding and a drought occur. Globally, women are more likely, and that's a fact, to experience poverty and have less socioeconomic power than men, making it more difficult for them to recover from natural disasters which affect infrastructure, jobs, and housing. And the latest report by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, makes it very clear. Severity and frequency of these natural disasters are going to increase if we do not act now to prevent them. It's also a fact that women traditionally tasked with gathering the fuel to cook and tend to stoves that use harmful cooking fuels like charcoal and kerosene, which effectively have and affect negatively the health environment and provides very, very negative impact on people's health. And as a result, and a very direct result, nearly 4 million people die from illness linked to cooking with polluting fuels every year. Women clearly going to be most affected according to the World Health Organization. So ladies and gentlemen, the link between gender equality, health, the environment, and changing climate cannot be denied or overlooked any longer. It is therefore logical that if we can empower women and girls around the world with the tools and knowledge to fight climate change where it hits harder, we will reduce the impact of climate change as a whole. Thirdly, and as my first and second point start to make it clear, the road to a sustainable future runs through SDG 5, gender equality. SDG 5 has been referred to as the mother of SDGs for the way it connects and influences all the other 16 goals. For example, we cannot achieve SDG 3, which is good health and well-being, without achieving gender equality. We cannot achieve SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, if we do not achieve gender equality. We cannot achieve SDG 10, which is reduce inequality, clearly if we don't achieve SDG 5, which is gender equality, and we certainly cannot achieve SDG 13, climate action, SDG 7, clean access to energy, without achieving gender equality. So to address the deepest impacts of climate change, we must empower girls and women around the world with the right education, tools, technologies, and knowledge that lead to global energy transition. We must reach out with our international partners to help women and girls around the world to move to cleaner fuels for cooking, electricity, and heating of their homes. We must help bring everyone from every community around the world through the energy transition together. As we seek more connected, inclusive, and equitable world. We must put tomorrow in our girls' hands today. I consider myself fortunate and very lucky to have grown up, live, and work in a place that truly understands the importance of this notion. Throughout the the UAE has empowered its women, its women with the opportunities to drive its sustainable development. Today, we have tremendous representation of women in our technical sectors, government and policy-making positions, and you've seen a few of them as we progress through the day. Today, we are proactively seeking holistic collaborative solutions with our partners to address critical human development challenges like clean cooking. Just last week, UAE and IRENA launched Beyond Food in collaboration with NEMA, Women Advancement Establishment. An initiative aims to provide people from climate-vulnerable communities around the world with sustainable forms of energy to help women transition to cleaner ways of cooking. And as we begin preparation to host COP28 in 2023, we will ensure that women are at the heart of organizing an inclusive, accessible, and impactful event. Ladies and gentlemen, only by elevating women into a position where they can drive change from the inside can we expect to shake the madness of the years that have brought us here. As we seek solutions to the dangers posed by climate change, we simply have to recognize that women need as many seats on the table as our male counterparts. It is simply, it's very simple, but very overlooked fact. Women and girls make up half of our world population. Failing to include them fully across society means we lose out on 50% of our human potential. Who knows what solutions contained inside this 50%? And by harnessing the full potential of this 50% globally, we must also recognize that diversity, inclusion, and equality are critical enabling to forging a sustainable future for all. That gender balance is not optional, but essential to taking climate action. That by investing in our women, we can reveal that our best days are ahead. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers for sharing their innovative insights and candid thoughts on the current state of gender equality across all industries. We have heard from so many incredible speakers this morning, all sharing their unique perspectives on the obstacles we still face in 2022 and the most effective solutions to overcome them, most importantly. But how do we synthesize this dialogue and move from rhetoric to action? What steps should we all aim to take after today's discussion? Our next and final speaker for this morning will help us answer some of those questions. Please help me in welcoming Ms. Anita Bhatia, UN Women Deputy Executive Director for UN Coordination, Partnerships, Resources, and Sustainability. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Her Excellency Reem Al-Hashimi, Her Excellency Ohud Al-Rumi, colleagues, friends. It is a real pleasure for me to be with you here today at Expo 2020 Dubai as we celebrate International Women's Day. Let's hear it for the women of the world. And it is perhaps unsurprising that today's event is labeled Break the Bias, because that's exactly what Expo 2020 Dubai has been doing since it was announced, with 190 countries represented and more than 15 million visitors to date. It truly is a global platform for connecting minds and creating the future. I would like, on this occasion, to congratulate Her Excellency Reem Al-Hashimi, the Minister of State for International Cooperation, for having done a spectacular job as the Director General of Expo 2020. She has exemplified what can be achieved when women are at the helm. This Expo has been truly groundbreaking for several reasons, not least because of the dedicated pavilion for women, an unprecedented move since the inception of world expositions in the mid-19th century. Let's have a round of applause for that. And now, I'd like to put away my prepared remarks and speak from the heart about what International Women's Day means for me and can mean for all of you. So I'd like to start by taking us back to a point about 26 years ago, which was when a very important event took place in Beijing. And this was the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, when women's rights activists from all over the world gathered to discuss the future of gender equality. And on that occasion, Hillary Clinton famously said, "Women's rights are human rights." And today, we see outside a sign which says, "What women achieve is humanity's achievement." So one would think that in those 26 years, we would have made tremendous strides as women, and we wouldn't actually need to have International Women's Day to talk about the challenges that face us. But the truth is, International Women's Days come and go, and the needle on gender equality moves very slowly. So I want to share some data with you because I want you to leave this room remembering some facts. And here's some of the data that I would like you to remember. Lots has improved in the last 26 years, particularly on issues like education, women's representation, maternal mortality rates have improved. So we have seen change. But let me tell you that the baseline from which we were measuring the change was very low. And when you look at the numbers today, you have to ask yourself, is this the world we want to live in, when less than 10% of heads of state or heads of government are women? Less than 25% of parliamentarians worldwide are women. The first female CEO on Wall Street was appointed just 2 years ago. And less than 14 countries in the world out of 193 member states of the United Nations have gender-equal cabinets. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in 2022, not in 1822. So, the question on International Women's Day is, what kind of a world do we want to build? And do we want to build back better, or do we want to build forward differently? And I think we all want to build a more just and equal world. So how are we going to do it? We're going to do it by recognizing that gender equality is not just a question of human rights, which of course it is, but it is actually the smart thing to do. Because companies and countries which have diversity and gender equal representation do better. They perform better. We saw that in the pandemic because lots of countries that did really well in the pandemic were helmed by women. We know that companies that have women on their boards do better because they have more diverse thinking and more ideas being brought to the table. And we know that when we take gender equality seriously, we can build a society, an economy, a country, and a world that is capitalizing on the human potential of every single human being. Nobody picks up a book to read just half of it. So why on earth would we leave half of our human assets in any family, community, organization, society, or country by the wayside? Why would we not use that potential? I think we all want to, but we haven't been able to. We need occasions like International Women's Day. We need events like Expo 2020 to move the needle. Most of all, we need leadership, commitment, and a real willingness to change. This does not have to come just from leaders. It can come from each and every one of us. Every one of us in our daily life can take a step towards moving the world closer to gender equality. Otherwise, we will be looking at the data that has come out of so many global reports and saying to ourselves that it's going to be another 136 years before we achieve gender parity. So not only will I not see gender parity and gender equality in my lifetime, my daughter will not see it, and neither will hers. Is that the world we want to create? I don't think so. So let's commit today, on the occasion of International Women's Day, to take a small step in each of our lives, but also to speak up, to speak out, and to push everyone we know in a leadership position to role model the behaviors, the attitudes, the mindsets, and the actions that are going to lead to gender equality. Please join me in making this International Women's Day the first day for the rest of your lives when you will work jointly with us at UN Women, the flagship entity on gender equality in the global multilateral system, to work with countries like the Emirates and others around the world to make gender equality a reality once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anita Bhatia. So, as we've heard today, changing norms and breaking biases to achieve gender equality not only depends on global collaboration and dialogue like the ones we've had here today, but crucially on tangible implementation at the national, local, and individual level.
Absolutely, Noura. Whilst this brings us to the end of our business here at the Assembly, the conversation cannot and will not end here today. It continues. We are excited for the International Women's Day Forum happening in Hall 1B. And for those of you who will not be able to gain access into that venue, I'm told that you'll be able to stream that from here. So that's good news. You don't get to miss out on the conversations that go on about the game-changing innovative solutions to breaking the bias.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, in addition to that, there's a lot happening outside in the lobby. Feel free to treat yourselves to the coffee and treats we have outside. And we also have the We the Women photography exhibition in partnership with Dignified Storytelling and Agora. We also have the See Us, Hear Us, Count Us In exhibit from the United Nations Population Fund to honor the rights of people of African descent.
Absolutely. You can also read more about the Women in Diplomacy Index we learnt about earlier today. And last but not least, don't forget to take the pledge to break the bias outside in the lobby. Make sure you do not miss out on that opportunity, because without any one of us being a part and parcel of the movement for change, change cannot be implemented, right? Thank you to everyone here, and we will see you all out there on the field.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, Noura.
Yes.
I almost forgot. My mother would not allow me to come back home, so please, please, stand right here as we celebrate International Women's Day.
Oh, thank you, Lunga. Thank you so much.
Happy International Women's Day.
And to you too, and to all the special women in your life, including
From them
your mom.
to you.
Thank you, Lunga's mother, for the flowers. Thank you. Bye.